righty, good evening or afternoon, I guess, technically. Howdy, it's meteorologist Timmy Albertson here with you guys, wearing the flannel. Of course, this is the uniform of those of us in extreme northern Wisconsin. Yeah, that's a standard around here. Got to have the flannel. I noticed, for those of you who've been around here, if you live anywhere in Minnesota or Wisconsin, you've probably seen those Nicolette Law billboards out there, and I noticed that the other day you had one that was insurance companies fear the flannel. I started it before it was cool. All right, enough about that stuff, folks. Let's talk about some severe weather. Now, we are tracking what is this now going to be? The second PDS Trendo watch we've had in, about a week? Even a little bit, actually probably less than that, really, about 5 days. Oklahoma, this is going to be their second PDS Trendo watch. They had one earlier in the month. Of course, I was down there for that one. Didn't see too much. The only really big Trendo during that was the Barnesville or Barnstable one. I can't remember the town name now. Excuse me, but now it looks like they're going to try for number 2 here with this PDS Trendo watch. Now, for those of you who might not know, PDS stands for particularly dangerous situation. We didn't normally have a lot of PDS Trendo watches, at least, about 10 years or so ago. But with increased forecasting and everything, they've become a little bit more common, this being the 4th one of the year now. But all things aside, we are tracking the possibility for some severe weather. All right, so the counties that you see here in red are all under a Trendo watch. Now, the counties down in Texas, for the most part, are not under the PDS Trendo watch. Theirs is just a generic Trendo watch. However, the main one, like I said, is going to be in Oklahoma. Right now, we are tracking some storms that are making their way down across the Red River Valley of the south. Got to be careful because there is a Red River up north that separates Minnesota and North Dakota. They call it the Red River of the North, I guess, to distinguish it from the Red River of Texas and Oklahoma. Anyways, moving rapidly along. Neither river, I've seen them both. Neither of them are red. Don't know why. But they certainly are watery. All right. What we're kind of tracking here right now at the moment here is quite a few in the way of some strong storms. Now, most of them have some severe thunderstorm warnings on them, but the 2 that we're watching actually happen to be down in the south here, south of Wichita Falls, Texas, which, by the way, fun fact for you, Wichita Falls is home to the world's smallest skyscraper. It was a scam. Look it up. All right. Anyways, so 2 areas that we're watching right now, again, are these 2 lone kind of supercells right now, right by themselves. Now, one of them has been warned for a little bit. The other one just recently had a Trendo warning on it. Now, we actually have had possibly 1 Trendo already today. Not in this area, though. For that, we had to go all the way down to Abilene, Texas, around that area where they had a pretty nice-looking supercell a little bit ago that was tracking its way to the south. Might have produced, at least according to reports, possibly a little Trendo that was maybe on the ground for a few minutes based on the radar. That sense is lifted, and now they're just left with a severe thunderstorm warning. That storm not looking quite as strong as it was earlier on. So we'll come back to that one later. But let's take a look at the 2 main ones here. Again, we're looking south of Wichita Falls, and then we'll talk a little bit about the environmental setup and what in the world is going on that is creating this possibility for potentially a pretty active live stream here. So here's our 2 main storms. One of them right now over Archer City, making its way towards Windhurst and Scotland. It's crossing the ocean. Actually, no, not really. It's Scotland, Texas. Just want to make sure we clarify that. Don't need people in Glasgow and Edinburgh freaking out at the moment. Though the UK has had Trendo outbreaks before, believe it or not. We'll talk about that another day. So let's take a look at this guy right now. Mainly just a radar indicated Trendo warning on it. The rotation that we were kind of looking at a little bit ago seems to have kind of gone down just a bit here. We'll flip up 2 different radar images here. Again, we're looking at the same 2 storms here, but we have 2 different radar images of it. And in meteorology, these are 2 types of radar images that we, really kind of use a lot. And the cat happens to be in the room now. So if you hear random meowing, now you know Velvet has joined us. Velvet, do you want to come here really quickly? So Velvet's going to try to explain. I know. You used to be on TV a lot back when we were in Zanesville. Yeah, I know. Now you don't like to be held. You always like to be held until I'm on. All right. Well, Velvet, I got to get back to work. So It's been a heck of a day, huh? All right, so the radar image that you see here on the left is the one that we typically show. This is your precipitation radar. Reflectivity is the official term for it here. But the radar image on your right is known as a velocity radar image. Now, what this does here is the radar is detecting, when it measures those droplets and everything out there, it's also measuring the direction. Long story short, it's a good way to look for wind without going into the radar physics of it, which, believe me, there are quite a few. So the green colors are winds that are going towards the radar. Red colors are winds that are going away from the radar. Obviously, we look for areas where we have high values of those pitted right up against each other. Now, there's also, some shape things that go into it because, yes, you can have two high values right next to each other if it happens to be right where the radar site is. But in this situation here, we're pretty decent distance away here. And the other type of velocity image here that really technically what I'm showing you on the right is called storm relative. What it's doing is it's filtering out the storm's motion to give us a kind of a really good indication of what the actual storm structure winds are looking like, if that makes any sense. But what you need to know is that we have a little bit of a rotation signature right here, kind of out in the middle of nowhere, just south of US 82 here. And again, not the strongest signature here, but still enough that it is enough to kind of, let me try that again, that it is still enough to produce this Trento warning here. Now, again, this is not observed. This is just radar indicated, but based on the environment that this storm could very well be going into here in just a little bit, well, we could see that rotation maybe trying to uptick a little bit. If what we saw in Abilene could be a little bit of an indication of what we could be expecting to see along the Red River today, and even maybe going into the OKC Metro, well, there is going to be the possibility for a few long track tornadoes. Now, whether that happens or not, we'll just kind of have to wait and see a little bit. But there you go. The other Trento warning, again, signature, much more faint here, just kind of a broad light kind of rotation here. Still enough for that Trento warning to be in effect, but we'll see here how that storm develops. Otherwise, zooming out a little bit, what we are left with is a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings that extend all the way across I-44, heading back up into parts of southwestern Oklahoma and all the way over into places such as Carnegie, Fort Cobb, Anadarko, and even Apache, Oklahoma. Now, for the moment, these are mainly for some straight line winds. So take that for what it's worth. But what we're also seeing, though, there's quite a bit in the way of hail. Interestingly, we've been talking about how it seems like this year there is just a ton of hail with these storms. We've been seeing a lot of 4-inch size reports. And for anybody who uses Twitter, well, I guess X, formerly known as Twitter, the social media website formerly known as Twitter, whatever. I saw a picture from that had the Weather Service put DVD size hail, possibly today. So there you go. Hopefully you get a good movie if you do have that hail. Personally, I like historical films. Then again, I am a nerd. All right, so there you go. Those right now have some decent warnings on them for about 60-mile-an-hour winds. This guy is mainly warned for the fact that it has some large hail, and it does have a history of producing hail, upwards of about 1 3/4 of an inch near Hobart, Oklahoma, and then even further down when it was over the town of Roosevelt, it produced 2 3/4 size inch hail. At 2 3/4 of an inch, just a little bit more than 2.5 inches. For those of you keeping track at home, if you have yourself a ruler, it's just a little bit bigger than 2.5 inches. All right. So there you go. Certainly some big hail producers. So while we're taking a look at these storms here, here's what else we're going to do. We're going to take a little bit of a look at the environment here. Now, for some of you who are waiting to see a big Trento on the ground, join the party. In the meantime, for those of you who like a little bit of an explanation as to what is going on, now's the time for you. All right, let's take a look here. We're going to flip screens here, and we're going to take a look at our good friend, or at least my good friend, which to you maybe might not be your good friend, but I guess we'll find out, the latest weather map. All right, here's at the surface. For all your station plot needs and all your frontal boundaries, here we go. We have this area of low pressure right now, right at the edge of the Colorado Rockies here. And what that low pressure is actually trying to do here is lift a bit of a warm front across parts of the Central Plains. what this is doing is that this is helping, this low pressure here. Again, the way the air flows around a low pressure is counterclockwise. So it's now pulling a lot of southerly winds all the way from the Gulf of Mexico going back into Oklahoma. Now, the Gulf of Mexico being a pretty decent sized body of water, about the size of the Gulf of Mexico. There's a lot of moisture that is associated with that. Not only that, but it's also pretty warm. So we have warm, moist air getting fed all the way through Texas up into parts of Oklahoma. That's good news if you're a thunderstorm, because warm, moist air is a heck of a lot easier to lift than, let's say, cold, dense air. And in fact, it's very hard to lift cold, dense air. Anyways, there you go. So there's that portion there. But what about this little symbol right here? For those of you who don't know, this is called a dry line. All right, that's that explanation. Now, just kidding. Basically, what's happening here is we have this cooler air over the mountains. It's rushing down the slope here of the mountains back, so it's descending. As it does so, it is warming rapidly and to a degree losing some of its moisture relativity because of that. Again, cold air, especially from high up mountains, tends to be pretty dry. So not only is this warming as it goes, but of course that causes the relative moisture in that air to drop without going into the equations behind it. Ideal gas law for those of you who want to know. Anyways, take a look here. When we are talking about a dry line, it's exactly that. It's not so much a boundary between two, well, I mean, I guess it is technically a boundary between two different air masses, but the noticeable thing about them is the difference in the dew point values, which obviously will translate into your relative humidity values depending upon some factors. Let's take a look at the air mass right now over Oklahoma. Temperatures mid-80s, dew points generally in the mid to upper 60s. Bit hot and a bit warm and certainly humid. Let's go down into Texas. Temperatures down here, look at that, all the way into the lower 90s with dew points sitting in the 70s. Good Lord, that is a very hot and muggy air mass. In fact, if you put that air mass over places like Chicago, there would be heat warnings. All right, but for Texas, it's just kind of another day. However, let's take a look here back at the Panhandle. Temperatures in the 80s and 90s, but look at these dew points, 20 degrees, 10 degrees. That is very, very dry air. Believe it or not, hot, dry air is denser than warm, moist air. So in a way, this is basically kind of a front, but it's really a noticeable front because of the moisture differences. Also, we tend to see hotter temperatures behind that dry line. So long story short, this can sometimes this does technically act as a front. And a lot of times in the Great Plains, especially this time of the year, a lot of severe weather outbreaks that we do see happen to be somewhat associated with a dry line. Obviously, the cold front is way back here. All right, so it's not cold front initiated like we'd expect across the deep south or even across the Midwest. This right now is kind of somewhat of the forcing mechanism. Again, it's that denser air kind of trying to drift its way a little bit. Weird thing about dry lines, though, is they don't like to tend to move necessarily like a front. They just kind of drift, and at times it seems like they jump. So they're kind of an interesting feature that, again, is pretty unique, at least in the U.S., to the Great Plains, especially the central and lower part of the Great Plains. Farthest east I've ever really seen a dry line go is about Iowa. They typically tend to just be right around this area, especially down here across Texas and Oklahoma. Anyways, so that being aside, a little bit of a deviance there for you, deviation, I guess, for you. But let's talk about the wind directions here. We got winds that are generally coming out of the south right now at the surface across parts of Oklahoma and Texas. We have this warm, moist air making its way, well, again, across parts of Texas and Oklahoma, coming its way in from the south. But what about a little bit higher up? And again, this is what is making this outbreak or, potential outbreak here. And so I'm going to show you another map. For those of you, this might be a little bit scary for you, but do not worry. I promise we're not going to stay on it long. We're going to go back to the radar here in just a little bit. But I want to show you here, courtesy of our friends over at the SPC here. This is somewhat of an upper level chart. Not very upper level, more like about a couple thousand feet up here. Again, we got the winds coming in from the south. You can see it lifting right there. Plenty of moisture. That's what these green lines are showing. Again, here's your dry line. You can see not much moisture there. So again, very strong cutoff here with that moisture, and also right ahead of that warm front. You can see a little bit there of a cutoff. Again, the wind's kind of coming straight in from the south. All right, folks, what if we go a little bit higher up? Let's just for fun, let's go to about 10,000 feet or so up above the ground here. You notice something interesting. The winds are no longer coming out of the south. They're coming out of the southwest. We have this trough right here over the Rocky Mountains. And again, at this level, there's not too much friction to get involved. So that wind is kind of following these isobars here. Again, we won't go into the physics behind that for today, but you'll notice that those winds kind of increase a little bit right here too. There's a little bit of a high wind speed core here of about 40 to 50 knots, which is about 45 to 55 miles an hour, because for some unknown god reason we still have to use knots in meteorology on upper level charts, and it drives me nuts. Anyways, but there you go. And those winds are kind of coming out of the southwest. So now you got winds at the surface coming out of the south, and you have winds about 10,000 feet now coming out of the southwest. Let's look a little bit higher here, folks. Let's go to about 20,000 or so feet. The winds are a bit more westerly here. And not only that, but they're at a pretty decent speed. Again, winds tend to be faster higher up you go, especially in this type of a setup here. Again, here's our trough of low pressure, upper level trough here. The winds are making their way, a little bit of a tight here. So we got a little bit of kind of an enhanced area of these winds kind of coming in and out from the west-southwest. We're then going to go a little bit higher up and take a look at that. We got what's known as a jet streak right here. This is an area of, there's a jet stream, and then within the jet stream, there are jet streaks, which are areas of faster moving winds. Over 100 knots up here. So we got basically 80 to 100 knot winds going up to about 25,000 feet. So, and this wind, especially over Oklahoma, is pretty westerly. So that is a pretty good wind shear. We have winds at the surface coming in from the south, winds higher up coming in from the west. That's known as wind shear, change of wind direction and speed with height. And in this case, there you go. That is good if you are a tornado trying to have, that is good if you are a thunderstorm trying to get some rotation. You need the wind shear. And if you are a supercell thunderstorm, you pretty much need wind shear in order to be a supercell thunderstorm. So that is one of the main factors today that we are expecting across parts of the southern plains is going to be the fact that there is quite a bit of wind shear here. As a matter of fact, let's take a little bit of a look here at some of the bulk shear values. Now, again, I don't expect you all to know this. We talked a little bit about this in the weather chats, and as we go closer to fall, when we restart the weather chats again, we'll probably talk about all this much more. But in the meantime, let's just take a look at some of those wind shear values. There you go. That's a pretty decent wind shear. All right. Upwards of about 70 knot wind shear. So very good environment in terms of wind shear for these thunderstorms. And again, that's why we're expecting the possibility here of a little bit of a potential severe weather outbreak. There are a few caveats, though. One of them being the fact that if we took a look here at the latest satellite imagery, we have a little problem, a little bit of a problem. One of the problems that we have is a little bit in the way of some excess cloud cover. Not necessarily the best thing if you are a strong thunderstorm. You know, we have those thunderstorms firing up, and those cloud tops are going, 50,000 feet up right now, some of them. Well, that's obviously running into that strong westerly wind, and so that wind is pushing those higher parts of the clouds further off to the east here. And depending upon the thickness of this, that could maybe try to limit some of the activity. Nonetheless, we still have clearing across Kansas and northern Oklahoma right now, as well as some additional storms firing up pretty much right along that dry line, or at least a little bit ahead of it. Also, that's where that warm front's crossing through. Looks to be about right in this area. So again, there's still a lot of factors going on. And as mentioned, with that wind shearing there, we could be certainly up for, again, as mentioned, an interesting time. When are we expecting, the activity to really fire up? Probably within the next, couple of hours or so is probably when it's going to be its most active, at least in terms of the tornado the probabilities here. Well, there's one thing that I was going to take a look at just for my own purposes. There we go. No matter how many times I've been using this thing for what now? 15 years almost, and sometimes I still can't remember where some of the stuff is. Anyways, we got some very high instability still across parts of Texas and Oklahoma. Not so much at the moment. I mean, this is still pretty good instability, don't get me wrong. 2,000 joules. We're looking at mixed level CAPE here, which stands for convective available potential energy, mixed down the lowest 100 millibars, and it's in joules per kilogram. So, for those of you keeping track of your newtons and everything, there you go. But again, this is kind of a pretty decently unstable air mass. Little bit of convective inhibition, though, right now across northern Oklahoma. But one thing that really likes to erode that is warm, moist air. Will really help to erode your convective inhibition, which is what these blues are that you see here. So we'll see here as this continues to kind of, go away a little bit here, if we could very well be seeing some more activity firing up here, like I said, over the next hour or so. So again, let's go ahead and take another look back now down towards our good old friend here. Kind of our strongest supercell that we have at the moment is this guy south of Wichita Falls. Now, again, we're talking today about supercell thunderstorms. Again, those are the ones that will produce your big hail, and those are the same ones that will produce your big long track tornadoes depending upon the environment. Now, again, that wind shear is a big thing for those supercells. You don't really get supercells in areas where there's no wind shear. So let's take a look here at our storm. Here's what we got. We got the updraft right here. Winds, of course, are kind of pushing that precipitation out ahead, but it's okay because the winds down at the surface are still coming in. So this is the inflow notch right here. And this is generally kind of a rain-free area. Again, that's where the updraft is the strongest, the updraft of the thunderstorm. And again, it's pulling in that warm, moist air into the storm. And what we tend to see here happening here is the updraft, obviously we have the updraft, which is tilted and it's rotating, and it will start to pull some of that precipitation back down around it. And boom, you start to get what is known as a hook echo feature. Again, it's this part right here. When you start seeing that with those supercell thunderstorms, good indication that this thing is, potentially, it is rotating. I mean, all supercells rotate. But we're starting to get that rotation a little bit lower down to the surface. So right now, the area of rotation that we're watching is over Windhurst, south of Scotland. Again, not Scotland, the UK, Scotland, Texas. Just in case anyone happens to be watching from Scotland. I'm going to use that joke as often as I can. Anyways, now the big thing, too, about supercells is you tend to see the hail north of that updraft here. Again, it's being lifted up. Winds are kind of pushing it. And so we tend to see the heavier precipitation and the hail typically forming ahead of that hook echo feature there. I don't know if any of you guys remember, at least when I was a kid, there was this kind of urban thing, I don't want to say urban legend because there is truth to it. But it was, before a tornado, you tend to see big hail. Obviously, you don't always have that to be the case. There have been plenty of tornadoes that have happened without big hail. But that's the reason for it, because supercells tend to kind of move to the north and to the east, and we tend to see the higher precipitation out ahead of that hook echo. So in a lot of cases, you would have that hail, and then you could have the potential for that tornado moving over. So this is the area right now that we are watching with this thunderstorm. It happens to be right over Windhurst. So again, if we take a look here at our velocities, though, what we're going to start to see here as we take a little bit of a look at here, I'm going to turn off these warnings and watches here for just a quick moment so we can just kind of see the storm itself here without all the colors and everything, is this little couplet right here. All right, so I talked about reds and greens right up against each other. This is what we're talking about. Now, in terms of a big tornado, we would see these values much, much higher. But what this is telling us already here is that this storm is certainly starting to rotate and maybe getting itself organized. Now, the only problem is at the moment is you see this right here. We have some light precipitation that is right in where that inflow is happening. Again, this is the inflow path, okay? Again, it's that rain, this is where the warm, moist air is being drawn into the thunderstorm. There happens to be a little bit of precipitation there at the moment. Now, obviously, that is not enough to deter even the strongest of rotation, but it could be something interesting to keep an eye on here a little bit. But my guess is at the moment, this isn't too big of a card player, at least at the moment. Again, we can have this filled in a little bit and still get very strong tornadoes, but you generally want to have this, as clear as possible, especially for, long track tornadoes. And anyways, then that goes into, tornadogenesis studies and everything. So this right here is, again, probably just a side lobing error on the radar here. We'll see what this looks like up on the next scan. Sometimes we get this weird flip that happens, but these values aren't too high yet for that to be occurring here. So again, this is probably just a false scan here, but there certainly is rotation. Again, you got winds here going towards the radar site, and then you have winds right here going away from the radar site. So you can use your imagination, and this is the rotation. And again, if we look over, it's right here. All right, so this is what we're looking at. There's your hook feature. All right, so fun times, absolutely, 100% fun times. I enjoy them. All right, so, and, so this is what we're going to look for here. We're going to kind of keep a little bit of an eye on this storm. Again, as mentioned, right now this is heading into that environment of, right up on the Red River. That is pretty favorable, especially with the wind shear. So it'll be very interesting to see exactly how this storm is going to evolve. Now, we have a few other radar tools that you're probably going to be seeing today, and one of them is known as the correlation coefficient here. So this warning has now been upgraded to basically be a warning where it is, whoa, let's get that fixed there. It is observed at the moment here. So again, that is a tornado now over the Windhurst area. So what we are going to do here is we are going to flip radar here really quickly on my end. Just give me 1 second. We're going to put up this here. I got to move something really quickly. Give me a quick second here. Okay. 1 second here. I just got to restart the good old radar here. And we're going to take a look at that because, again, as mentioned, it is now a confirmed tornado that is on the ground. So we're going to take a look at another radar, which is known as the correlation coefficient. We're going to talk a little bit about that here. I just want to get everything reloaded, especially since we may want to get a few radar scans saved for this. I like to save radar scans for just about any time I see a tornado. And again, let's go back up here. What we're going to do is I'm going to flip on the radar here, and actually it does appear that we have it, albeit it doesn't look overly strong, but it's still pretty decent right there. This is what we mean. There's your high, values-ish of those two colors right up against each other. So, and then technically what we would do is we would add those two values together, and that would give us a good indication of what is known as the gate-to-gate shear. Now we're starting to see this really getting better here. So this thing might actually be starting to intensify a bit more. So it does appear that we have a tornado on the ground, and one of the ways that we can tell is what is known as a correlation coefficient radar here. This is a very, very powerful tool in radar meteorology that we didn't have when I was a kid. It's, in terms of weather history, it's somewhat new. It's probably at least about 10 to 15 years old. But the radar is sending in a pulse, like this, and then it's sending in one like that. And so it's actually able to measure to a degree the size of the objects that it is detecting. And what for those of you who like statistics, you might have heard about correlations before. If something has a high correlation, that means that there are a lot of things that are similar to each other. If it's a low correlation, it means they're not very similar to each other. So raindrops have a high correlation. They're all pretty much about the same size. Tornado debris, not so much. Tornado debris tends to have a much lower correlation. And so in these images, that blue and then going back down into those grays is where we see is what this table shows as low correlation coefficients. So this is very useful when looking for tornadic debris. Now, at the moment, let's kind of loop this here a little bit and see if we can't see the debris signature. It would have been right around this area here, so that may have been it. Again, if it's not a strong tornado, we might not be able to, well, how close are we to the radar site? Yeah, we're a little distance away from the radar site. So typically with the strong tornadoes, we tend to see the debris really kind of going higher up. All right, we tend to see that debris really being lofted, so it will show up a little bit better, especially when it's a strong one or if it's close to the radar site. But based on what we're seeing here on our reflectivity here again, and then let's go ahead and look back over towards our, so there may have been a brief little tornado here. Again, this is kind of right at the edge of edge of what we'd expect here. Let me get those warnings back up so we can take a little bit of a look here. So this warning will be set to expire, and they are going to go ahead and increase this. Yeah, so it looks like this storm is certainly intensifying here. Could very well have a pretty decent, potentially sized tornado here. So we'll keep an eye on this guy. Let's go ahead and stop it here for just a moment. Even though it looks like that rotation might have backed down just a little bit, again, you got to also understand that the radar has to see through. The radar is all the way up here in Frederick, Oklahoma. All right, so this is near the Lawton area. So it's got to see not only quite a distance, but it has to look through this mess over Wichita Falls at the moment. So might be part of the reason why we're not getting the most defined radar scan. But I'll tell you, just by looking at the reflectivities, this is certainly a pretty decent hook here. A pretty decent looking supercell. So again, they're still tagging that as observed. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take a little bit of a look here. I want to see what they have the speed is, about 35 miles an hour. Yeah, that's kind of right at the range where, we tend to see, tornado speed is. Of course, if you were down in Iowa with me the other day, those storms were moving at about 70 miles an hour. So that was a little bit unusual, but typically 45 miles an hour or so tends to be kind of where tornadoes really like to move. Let's take a look here. We're going to move this thing. Let's just take it at about 40 miles an hour. We're going to track this thing. Again, not a heavily populated area, but there still are a few towns, one of them being Deer Creek. About 10 minutes is when this rotation will be coming up. Blue Grove, about 15 minutes, and Stoneburg in about 40 minutes if it continues on its current track. Now, keep in mind, folks, that these things can shift a little bit, especially when they are intensifying. They like to move a little bit to the east. So, again, this is just going to be kind of a general-ish track, but either way, going to be making its way here. It looks like it'll be staying south of Henrietta. We'll see, though, exactly how that decides it wants to track. But for the moment, it looks like it'll be staying well south of Henrietta, kind of somewhat over rural areas, though we'll have to keep an eye on places like Bellevue and see how they are. So at the moment, again, we're waiting to see if we have any reports here of any damage or observations coming out of the Windhurst area. Let's take a look all the way up in Woodward, Oklahoma, which for those of you who remember had a pretty big tornado there years ago, pretty big F4 tornado there. At the moment, we got the storm just firing up, but it doesn't appear, mind you, this is somewhat of a little bit of a radar gap here. The moment, it does not appear as though it has much in the way of rotation, but that could very well change. We also got quite a few storms firing up now across Kansas, large hail with these guys at the moment, and we're going to see if these guys also try to rotate here in just a little bit. This storm could be interesting to watch as it's on the southern side, so it doesn't have really much to interfere with the inflow of the storm. Still looks like it's trying to get organized, though, but right now, 2-inch size hail. I believe that based on some of these reflectivities that we are seeing. To get kind of a good idea as to where the really heavy hail might be, we use what is known as a VIL, vertically integrated liquid radar. And again, this is just detecting the amount of moisture if in a particular air column. Yeah. Anyways, basically where you see these white colors, that's some big hail. So there's that. Let's see here. One other thing I want to see if we can't pop up here is hydrometeor classification. For what it's worth, yellow tends to be very large hail, red tends to be rain and hail. So it does look like we are certainly getting a pretty decent size hail signature here. That's south of Sitka at the moment. Could maybe try to drift a little bit again, generally kind of a rural area at the moment, but based on the environment and everything, we'll see how these storms go. And keep in mind that there is going to be the potential for some of these storms to be long tracked. Again, case in point, kind of what we're seeing with this particular supercell. Now, I will say this thing looks like it's cycling up again. So if it didn't have something on the ground, it's probably very close to putting it back onto the ground. If it is on the ground, it's probably intensifying just a little bit. Again, we have our, our warm, moist air inflow right here. So that's the way the air is moving in. It's getting a little bit of a push here from some of that. Again, that helps to kind of create that little bit of rotation right there. And again, as we talked about, we took a look at those wind shear values all the way across the upper levels. All the way across the upper levels. This thing is certainly rotating and will probably continue to rotate here for a little bit. So at the moment here, again, this is kind of our main guy. And this guy, like I said, is going to be tracking to the north. Again, right now it looks like it'll be staying south of Henrietta. That's just something we'll have to, unless this thing takes a hard, turn to the north. But at the moment here, I guess we'll say it's not going to be making its way towards Henrietta. Let's one other thing I want to see. Let's go back to our correlation, see if we can't see a debris signature. And I'm not seeing one at the moment. Doesn't mean that there isn't one. Well, actually, there isn't really a debris signature here. A little bit of a mess, but again, if it's not necessarily strong, given how far away this is from the radar, it might be having a little bit of a problem picking one up. And not only that, but as I mentioned earlier, the radar has to look through this mess here. All right, so there's also this going on. So not the best clear signal for a radar beam to kind of go through. So that might also account for some of what we're seeing as a little bit of a drop off. Regardless, though, like I said, this storm is looking really good. Might not be what you would consider textbook, but then again, in weather, nothing ever repeats. But it's got a pretty good structure. It's really got a good inflow, and based on the environment that it's in, it's got a pretty good chance of, maintaining itself and potentially even getting a bit stronger. Again, we're taking a look here at the velocities, and like I said, given how far away we are, this is a pretty decent signature. It's still being, it's now tagged as radar indicated. So again, it looks like because we lost our debris signature, as I was telling you about earlier, there's no confirmation on it yet. I'm checking on my end, but it looks like we probably might have had a brief one, or at least a funnel cloud or something along those lines. But even though we haven't necessarily had a report of a big or anything like that at the moment, despite from that brief observed that we had when it was around Windhurst, this storm, like I said, looks like it may be, able to maintain itself for a while. And we tend to see these guys cycling. They'll kind of weaken, get strong, get weaken, get strong, get weaken, get strong. And we see that with tornadoes sometimes too, the tornadoes themselves. So a few things here. We had a tornado report. It was on the ground for about a minute. Yeah, so it was a short-lived tornado near the Windhurst area. We saw that there on the radar scan. That's just at least going based off one of those observations, which, again, I based on what we saw on the radar, it makes complete sense. That is, probably was not a long track tornado, but it was enough to get the observed tag and everything else going on. But again, taking a look at the storm here, it may be looking to cycle back up. And typically what we see with some of these supercells, especially when we're talking about tornadoes, we tend to sometimes see, generally they'll produce, one or two little weak tornadoes before they really get, just the way the atmospheric conditions work out. I'm not saying it happens all the time, but sometimes it happens. In fact, actually, one of the most interesting ones was back in December of 2021, if anyone remembers that one. The town of Mayfield, Kentucky. That was a long track supercell. That thing was insanely long track. It was pretty cool, to be honest with you. That produced a tornado all the way down near Arkansas. And then it continued all the way through a good chunk of western Kentucky. In fact, I remember watching that storm the time I was working in Ohio. And I remember it was like 1 a.m. in the morning. And that thing was still showing indications as it was getting ready to cross the Ohio River. But case in point, that produced a very long track tornado. At least that's what was thought initially, that this thing was on the ground from pretty much Arkansas, or, the Tennessee-Arkansas border, all the way through, most of western Kentucky. That would have easily made the most long-track tornado on history. However, what they found is that it produced a pretty decent tornado, about, I think it was an EF3 or an EF4, and then that tornado dissipated. There was a little brief spin-up tornado right in, about a couple minutes, about like a mile or so later. That was on the ground for, about a minute or two. Then that lifted, and then it produced that long track EF4 again that made its way through. So I'm just saying these supercells tend to cycle a little bit, and sometimes, you get interesting things like that. A little bit of a side tangent. Anyways. Yeah, we're still getting those hail reports coming in. 2.5, 2 3/4 of an inch. I believe have yet to see a 3 inches. Doesn't mean that it hasn't happened. It just hasn't been reported yet. But still have yet to see one of those. One other thing, we're going to go back up to this Woodward storm. Again, the moment still does not appear that it has much in the way of rotation, but certainly has some decent hail with it. And then, like I said, I want to really keep an eye on this thunderstorm up here. This is right at the Kansas-Oklahoma border, Lexington, Coldwater area. Let's see here, Dodge City's over here, Liberals over here. So again, kind of a little bit out in the open-ish. I don't even know what you call that. Somewhat rural area here. A lot of farm communities, but again, it has this little bit of a hook here. So we know this thing is trying to get itself organized, but we're still not seeing very high values of those yet. But it doesn't mean that that won't happen. In fact, one thing I'm going to do on my end that I really want to see is how this translates going a little bit higher up. Now, I'm not going to show you. I'm not going to show you this on the screen here because I don't feel like getting everything all wonky and messed up for you guys to see here. But what I'm doing is there's a little bit of rotation higher up with it. I mean, obviously, if it's producing that type of hail, it does have a little bit of rotation here. And we're going to see if that is able to mix itself down to the surface. So again, this storm could become pretty active here in a little bit. But obviously, this is still our main guy. And again, we're coming up on the Red River now. So, ooh, boy, that's really looking good. So here's another interesting thing. If you might not have noticed that, but they did issue a new severe thunderstorm warning. It's right here, and they did that because of the hail. And a lot of times with the this type of setup is you will see that you'll see the tornado warning, but then the rest of the storm is under a severe thunderstorm warning. Again, because that's where that hail is. Again, we talked about how the hail tends to be a little bit up here, so it's going to be south of where that rotation is. So. If there were, storms tracking like that, obviously you're going to need a warning up here to account for the hail. Tornado warning needs to be down here. Obviously, someone over here is probably not going to be seeing the tornado, so there's no need for a tornado warning up here, but you still got to get that hail. And this looks like a cyclops that is smiling. That's what that doodle looked like. Anyways, let's go ahead and continue on. We're going to look here. I want to see if we have anything at the moment here on the CCs. Not yet. But again, a little far out here. Velocity itself showing that it's still there. But like I said, I like that storm relative. So we're going to kind of keep on that. And again, this is the area of rotation that we're watching. And like I said, my guess is here is there is certainly a wall cloud here. Meteorological targets that lowering that we start seeing. And typically from that, we'll start seeing that funnel cloud and everything making its way down. So let me see here if anybody has said anything yet about that. Yes, there are a couple of wall cloud reports. Rotating wall cloud, this would have been about 10 minutes ago, and same thing about 20 minutes ago. Oh, I'm sorry. It was the wrong one. So not yet, but from the looks of it, again, if that tornado report there and everything, probably did. So, man, this thing is really wanting to get itself organized here. It looks like it has maybe lost a little bit of that outflow or inflow here. So that might have been something that briefly pushed it. That what we could have seen briefly is maybe the outflow from one of these storms might have accidentally came in here and interrupted that. So we'll see here, though, if this guy is able to reorganize itself. And like I said, given the environment, I can't imagine why it wouldn't be, at least, without really going hardcore into the analysis, which is much easier to do post-analysis than it is present. Anyways, you get what I'm saying. So, yeah, right now, this is really kind of the main guy. Let's go back down here to, I want to talk about our Abilene storm. Now, we mentioned this earlier towards the beginning of the live stream, how we had what appeared to be a good decent supercell that kind of weakened a bit, and now it looks like it's re-intensified. In fact, it looks like it might have actually produced a tornado here, just based on what we're seeing. Not a strong one, but a little bit of hook pretty much right over Cross Plains. And we're going to continue to track this storm. Again, this is a little bit further down to the south. We're looking, not even in Abilene, Texas. Abilene is going to be right here. This is Abilene. So still kind of out in the rural north central Texas area. Fun fact for you, this town of Cisco right here. That's where the first Hilton Hotel was. I actually just learned that today because I was looking. I was just looking at the statistics about Cisco, and because I was just curious, it was very populated back in the 30s, and like a lot of places in the plains, it kind of dropped off a bit. And reading that, I found out that was where the first Hilton Hotel was. The guy bought the first hotel there. The more you know. And at the time, it was 8-hour shifts. All right, so let's take a look here at this guy. I'll tell you what, this might be getting ready to maybe drop something new here. Again, they still got a radar indicated warning, but I'm looking at this and I'm seeing a really decent little couple right there. See how it's, so stop it here, and you can see right here, decent little values. We got a patch of wind going towards the radar, which in this case is all the way up in Abilene, so there. And then we have this area of winds going away from the radar, right there. All right, so, and take a look here. We got our rain-free inflow notch right about there. If we really wanted to, we could make a weather map out of this, but so we got our frontal, right here, moving like that. Let's see here. This would be advancing as a warm front, like so. This would be advancing a little bit like a cold front or a stationary front. This right here looks to be a little bit cold fronty, but probably like that. So there you go. Usually a little meso analysis. Anyways, I digress. And again, this is right now over rural area. It's northeast of Cross Plains, so it's not, unless it's like Night of the Twisters or something, like in Grand Isle, where a lot of those tornadoes, move the opposite direction. This one doesn't appear to be doing that based on the winds and everything, so it's moving away from there, but it could be getting close to Savannah, but then generally staying out in open areas, eventually maybe heading towards Pleasant Hill. We'll have to keep a little bit of an eye on that. Again, I want to see here if we have anything up on the CCs. I'm wondering if that might be it right there, or if that is just a fluke there, but that could be it right there. Let's take a look here. That might be it. Not strong. That might be it. We'll wait here another scan or two to see if that, or that could just be, like I said, a little bit of a fluke there. It does line up, at least glancing here. Yeah, it does line up a bit with that. So pretty cool. And like I said, you could really see, those upper level winds really pushing that the high up clouds, further out there. That's really cool. You can definitely see the amount of wind shear that we're dealing with today. All right, let's get those warnings back on here. And while we're at it, we're going to take a look here at, I want to bring it up while we're doing it. I do want to share with you guys that PDS Trend watch that, again, is mentioned. We're taking a look at over in Oklahoma. So, again, right now, tornado warning mainly down across Abilene area. Looks like they go ahead and cancel that tornado warning here, or is that just not showing up on our graphic properly? Yeah, it's not showing up on the graphic properly, but there is a tornado warning down here around Wichita Falls. Again, this is the PDS Trino watch that you see here in that red box color. Again, some of you might be familiar with seeing the standard watch box. Technically, those watches are done county by county, but that's who's included at it. This is a PDS Trino watch, and right now, our good friend happens to be right in that PDS Trino watch. So let's take a look here at our good friend here, the Storm. They have bumped it back up to observe now. Again, a little tricky to see it here on the velocity or on the CCs here, but what I want to do is take a little bit of a look at its Storm relative here. And again, I haven't seen any new reports at the moment coming down my way, but it's interesting that they went ahead and bumped that back up to observe when it does appear that it might have kind of temporarily weakened. We're going to keep an eye on it here. So right now, we'll treat it as if it's observed, but at least based on some of the rare schemes, might not be at the moment, but again, this has probably produced at least before. Might have done the exact same thing. See that times when these little short frames happen to observe that on. And those of you who are talking about warnings, categories, there's trying warning, but sometimes it's a bird and sometimes it's which means it's a bird. Take a look here a little bit thing here does not let you can kind of see it like up and it seems going down and then up. That's standard. So, yeah. Sure.
Timmy, how are things going? Hey, Chris.
Hey, how's it going, Michael?
Good. How are you?
Good. We got
Lost
alumni and
Timmy
state track and alumni. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Can you see my thing?
All right. So it's hard seeing that, but so the bigger piece that has kind of that coily wire.
Yep.
And then so plug that piece into the mic jack on your computer.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
When I do that.
And then turn that piece on if it's not on already.
This one here.
The one you just plugged in.
When I plug it in, it shuts the. Can you hear me still?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. It's plugged in.
All right. Are there any lights on the receiver there?
Plugged in.
Yeah. Did you say the lights went off when you plugged it in? Can you still hear me?
Hey.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me now? Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Okay. I'm gonna plug it back in. My lights are on.
Are you sure you're not plugging? Don't plug it into the headphone jack. Has to be the mic one.
Oh. I only see one jack. Oh. Unless there's one on this side. Maybe it's clear over here. Nope. I only got one hole.
Okay. I'll have to look at it then. And see if there's an adapter or something. Timmy's back.
Yeah, how long was I frozen?
A few minutes, probably.
Ah, darn it. I was trying to go for a full hour. That without internet problems. Anyways, are we still live?
We are live.
Good. Excellent.
So you're following an observed tornado.
Yeah, my little guy down here. It's observed, but I'll tell you, it doesn't look too good. This would have been it right here. It looks like the rotation on that's gone down. It looks like the inflow got cut off, but it might be trying to form a new something down around Rising Star, which earlier I can't remember if I was still on when I set up, but it confused me at first because I thought it said Ringo Star, and I was really, but it's Rising Star. Rising Star. And Scotland is okay. So I want to make sure mention that. Because earlier we were tracking a storm down near Scotland. Now it looks like they have extended that tornado warning, by the way. Oh, you guys can't see my screen. I'll go ahead and put that back up for you. For those of you watching, every now and then up here in northern Wisconsin, the interwebs like to not work. That's what you get for living up here where it snows 9 months of the year. But anyways, So this storm has had a history of kind of cycling back and forth. But I will say though, the past couple of scans, I guess for those of you who like, tornadoes, a little bit concerning here that it seems like it might have kind of fallen apart a little bit. And I'm wondering if it might have ran into some of that rain-cooled air from some of this activity that was over Wichita Falls, that the outflow might have accidentally kind of came in and cut it out just a little bit. But that being said, tornado warning's still on it, but nothing at the moment, though it does look like it is now starting to track a little bit north here of Henrietta. So this is certainly a storm to be watching here. Chris, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good, Timmy. I'm
Good.
coming in here from Northwest Kansas. We got alumni tonight, and we got people down at State Track in Wichita. So it's still going on. We got sent 3 of my nieces and nephews there. 9 events. We think we got 9 medals just came in. So
awesome.
Pretty cool for 3 kids to get 9 medals at state.
Darn right. I like 9 medals. What medals would I choose if I could have 9? Well, obviously I'd choose gold, silver, platinum. I probably would, put platinum as the highest. Palladium's pretty good. That has some work to it. Copper kind of comes and goes. Zinc, you could always use zinc. What else? What other metals would I want? So I have palladium, platinum, silver, gold, zinc, copper. Okay, I need 1 more for my 7. Oh, no, you said 9. I need 3 more metals. I've kind of always wanted uranium, but I mean, I don't I'd like to say that I have uranium, but I don't really want to be near it. Demon Core. You ever read about that thing? Hey, so earlier, Chris.
Okay.
Chris.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say earlier, I was talking to Michael. You know what we haven't seen yet, weather-wise? A major tornado going through a major airport. Just wanted to make sure I brought that up. Seeing as how it seems like sometimes when we talk about things, I probably just jinxed it, but yeah. All right, Chris, I'm sorry. Go ahead and say what you were going to say. I'm going to give my voice here just a few minute rest, but I'll still be.
So you've been probably covering the storms down south, and you've been talking about these up in Kansas that have just popped up.
Absolutely. Well, not so much. We've been mainly focusing on this guy down around here, as well as the one right up on the Red River. So by all means, go ahead and talk about the ones in Kansas, because those really just kind of fired up recently.
Yeah, we've got we had this dry line out here in western Kansas, and we've seen storms fire up along that here over the last hour, which extend from just into the Woodward, Oklahoma area, across the border to the south and west of Medicine Lodge, and then another cell south of Larnard, and one to the north of Hayes. That is the west line on that tornado watch box that goes in till 1 o'clock tonight. So along this dry line, we're going to see these storms intensify. We can watch them for possibility. Right now, they've got 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts on them and 2-inch hail potential for the next hour or so, 45 minutes to an hour through that 7 p.m. So we're going to keep an eye on those. When you get down here to the Hutchinson, Wichita areas, these cells along the Oklahoma border, that is that other tornado watch that is the particularly dangerous situation one. So that is the area. If you get in that Wichita Hutch area, south of Great Bend, to watch for the particularly more stronger tornado outbreak that would connect down there into Oklahoma and go all the way into those areas in Texas. So that is one thing to watch here. So if we've got anybody listening, obviously we got State Track going on. It's one of the biggest track events in the country because all sizes schools, from the real small schools all the way to 6A, participate in one facility there in Wichita. So they are all there trying to get their stuff done this evening, watching these storms coming from the west. Looks like they probably will get done. but we'll just keep an eye on that because it's far enough away that we won't be in the Wichita area for 2-3 more hours or so here this evening. But the other thing they're talking about is a meso discussion that would include this activity that's back in the northwest corner with the cold front. So out here, this stuff in northeast Colorado, there's a couple special weather statements now, a severe thunderstorm warning on the eastern edge of this area that could potentially become a severe thunderstorm watch here at 6:45 this evening or before 6:45. So in the next 45 minutes, Weather Service could issue a severe thunderstorm watch on this stuff out in northeast Colorado and into northwestern Kansas. So we'll keep an eye on that. If that does happen, we could see a severe thunderstorm watch for the immediate listening area where I'm working from with the radio stations, and northwest Kansas, the Atwood area, a watch up there out here. But we do have this cell north of Hayes, the one in the south and west of Larned, and then down by Medicine Lodge and activity in Woodward, Oklahoma, all moving northeast at about 30-35 miles an hour. So we'll keep an eye on that activity, the stuff out here in northwest Kansas, and Timmy, and we'll keep going here this evening with the stuff into Oklahoma and Texas. This is quite an area of coverage here tonight, and again, it's one of those situations where it's a particularly dangerous watch being issued down there in them southern zones and into Oklahoma. So those areas are where we've got a lot of storm chasers. A lot of focus has been on that here today as the area of concern. And right now we've got that dry line firing up all the way, kind of like what we saw with the derecho outbreak or the strong winds last week. We've got a nice dry line set up now that goes all the way from Hayes, Kansas, all the way down there to the Wichita Falls, Stephenville area, where you've been talking about those tornadoes here this afternoon.
Yeah, and we were showing those watches earlier. For those of you who want to know more of the atmospheric setup, maybe we'll do that again in a little bit. But there is just quite a lot. I don't know if you've seen, Chris, the amount of wind shear that is present over Oklahoma right now. The winds at the surface are coming in from the south, but higher up they're coming in almost straight out of the west. So it's an area of really ample wind shear and a fair amount of instability. I mean, we got according here we got mixed layer Cape here about 4,000 right up on the Red River, and right now estimated 5,000 over the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but it'll be a little while till the activity probably makes it towards there. But it's a very, very high instability values. The downside is there's still a little bit of inhibition in the way, as indicated here by these blue colors here. Not a lot. I'm thinking here that as long as everything kind of goes right, it shouldn't take long for this to erode away. I'm kind of surprised it hasn't completely eroded yet. But regardless of the fact, those storms are still firing up, like you said, right along the dry line, and it might be hard for folks at home to see. We talked a little bit about the dry line earlier on, so if you want to learn more about that, just back up a little bit in the live stream. I talked about the whole atmospheric setup here, but the dry line values. I mean, right now in Plainview, Texas, dew point is 18 degrees, so temperature of 90. So that's a pretty good dry line. And look at here in Vernon, 68 degree dew point with a temperature of 84. So certainly a very, very decent dry line here. It looks like it's even popping up. I'm going to go ahead here and loop that, but this might be it right here. Depending upon how I'm going to try to loop this here. I just want to double check that, but that might be it.
Yeah, that area to the southwest of Woodward, that Gage, Oklahoma, that's kind of where that wind shear is coming into that. And that you can see, when you look at the surface map and the what you just put up there, the capes and that area right there in that Oklahoma, Medicine Lodge area to the south there could be something to keep an eye on here.
it's interesting. It's just interesting the amount of instability, of instability. They're always interesting, but I'm trying to remember the last time I really saw a 4 to 5,000 mixed layer cape value. We've seen quite a few 2,500 and 3,000s this year, and again, technically that's you can have a high cape value and not see anything. It's happening. It's not normal, but it has happened. But when was the last time, Chris, you remember seeing cape values that high?
Well, we were talking about that way back on one of them earlier severe weather events we did. And we were that day, I think the first ones that popped up in northeast Kansas there in the early parts of, I guess it would have been in late March. I think they were 1,500, 25, getting up to levels like this. And we had the same question about the highest we've seen. And 4,000 is something that I think, when we had that, the days when we down and around when El Dorado had some of those outbreaks and maybe more Oklahoma back in those days, those kind of them big tornado days that we've seen in the past. They were in the 3s and the 4s. You get these 4s and 5s. I haven't done a lot of severe weather the last 4 years, due to various reasons out here with the radio stations and stuff. But and we don't usually get them that high out to the west. But once you get down there to that Wichita, El Dorado, down there to Oklahoma City, that's usually where I've seen them historically, which they call Tornado Alley.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember too with the 2011 outbreak. I don't think they were quite that high. They were high though, but I don't remember them being that high. It's just interesting, and I think some of this is computer drive too. But so who knows if it's really exactly 5,000 here over Dallas? But still, though, 3s and 4s. It's those you typically start seeing when you're pretty good events here. But like I said, though, they're this isn't as clear cut dry of a severe weather outbreak, despite some of that. There's still a few uncertainties, I think. I don't know where I was going with that response, but
that kind of gives a history of what the discussions we've had in the past here with this year, and this is the highest this year, or one of the highest that we've worked.
Yeah, it's for those of you who like numbers, which I've noticed recently, a lot of forecasters really start to like these. In meteorology we have Chris. Remember, there used to be the K index, and that was really kind of it. Now we have hail parameter, significant, Craven Brooks, all these different. Every year it seems like there's a new one, and I've noticed that a lot of forecasting recently has kind of relied upon some of those, and I have mixed feelings about it because you can have but sometimes there's other factors that go into some of the stuff, but I'm just curious here. Let's take a look. Have you ever heard of the violent tornado parameter? I've heard of that. Somewhat recent.
Yeah, it's more recent. Yes.
Well, it's about 9 and 10 across the Red River.
Have you watched it on any of the other events?
Here's one that both you and I would remember. Remember lifted index, LIs?
LIs, and Ks. So we got some
negative 12.
Negative 12. Yeah, these are the negs.
Yeah, it's a negative 12 over the Red River. This is some old. I don't want to say old. I just these are some of the more traditional one, but the K index has been proven to not necessarily be the best, or not the K index, the LI, the lifted indices.
Yeah.
Tend to not be the best indicator, but yeah, it's about it's minus 13 over OKC right now. And then see what our significant hail is.
And the severe breaks, what 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. It's kind of when you start getting the severe storms. So 13, anything negative.
Yeah. Well, because that has to do with, if I remember correctly, the LIs, it has a lot to do with just temperature. Like high,
How it
if I
can,
remember correctly. I can't remember the exact equation for it, but let's see. What's the other big parameter? Oh, the
what's
Craven
one?
Brooks.
Oh yeah, that one. Yeah.
It's I can't tell, but I think it's 170. I didn't really
What's
know
that
you
new?
could get that
One
high.
what's the one that says new on it?
Oh, the new one. This is the significant tornado using 0 to 500 meter storm relative helicity.
Oh, that one might be good. I kind of use that.
It's at 10 and 11. Let me look that one up here and see what some of the criteria is.
I know on the severe weather models, that's kind of one that's up there. Oh, here comes some state.
Which I'm wondering if that might be. Let's see here. I just want to see on my end. If they got a scale for it off the top of my head here, it's all right. So here's the equation for it. It's mixed layer cape divided by 1500 times the mixed level 2000 LCL. Divide that by 1000, and then it's the 0 to 500 SRH divided by, and then wow. There's a lot of division in this one. Let's see here. It says that a majority of significant tornadoes, F2 or greater, have been associated with STP values greater than 1 within an hour of tornado occurrence. So I'm guessing if it's at 10, what would you say?
You're probably got a high likeliness. With
Probably I like
what were
this.
those numbers you said? 100?
No, it says an the Craven Brooks.
Yeah, these are 14s and 13. I can't. It's too small for me to see.
I'm sorry. I keep moving back and forth too. So yeah, this is looks like a 13 and a maybe a 16.
Okay.
Might be the highest. So if I'm sorry, it's a 10 and it's a 10 and 11.
10 and 11. Okay.
So if historically F2s or greater happen where the significant tornado parameter is at least 1 greater than an hour before, we tend to see F. So
we need to go look down there, see what we got.
well, right now there is a new one. There is the tornado warning is still in effect. Let me go ahead and put the radar back up. The tornado warning is still in effect down here, right up along the Red River. We're looking just south of US 80, or we're looking right up on US 81 here. So this is the Red River. These are Texas counties. There's Wichita Falls. This guy is looking like it might be trying to get itself reorganized a little bit after what I'm imagining might have been some rain-cooled air from the storms over Wichita Falls that might have interfered with this guy for a little bit, but it looks like it might be trying to regroup itself. Interestingly, we have a new storm that's fired up here north of Altus. Now, this is still in that environment that would be somewhat favorable, although there is some rain-cooled air here. Dew points are a little bit lower back here than they are a little bit further off towards the east. There is also a brand new tornado warning, and that's going to be for the Woodward storm that you were talking about just a little bit ago. It also is being warned for hail of 2 3/4 size inch. The biggest one we've gotten today, Chris, 3.5.
Oh, 3.5.
Almost, Chris, almost. I was talking about that right before you joined, that it seems like this year, every severe weather event we've had, so I think aside from the last one that I was down in Iowa for, I think that might have been the first one that we did a coverage on where there wasn't a 4-inch,
No.
unless I missed it.
Yeah, the ones that we've been doing, the spring ones, all of them have, except for that Iowa one, and it was 3 inches in that area right where you were, where that Greensfield area.
Green, yeah, that was that was I was actually in Green, because I made my way down to Orient. I was actually in Greenfield probably about 20 minutes before it hit there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was talking to, yeah.
I know when you sent that picture to me, and I go, "Where you at?" And I was just kind of firing the computer up, and I'm like, "Crap!"
Yeah.
On the ground. Then I saw the speed, and then I started texting you. Where are you? Where are you?
Oh yeah.
I knew you were close to that where that was, and I think it was moving.
Yeah, it was because I sent you guys that photo, and then you texted me, and by that point we were already booking it because there was another area of rotation just down to the south. That thing was moving. It was actually one of those moments where I had two options. I was thinking, do I go back up to Greenfield or do I just go east? Because the only reason I went east was because I was trying to stay ahead of that line, albeit it's very difficult when it's moving at 70 miles an hour. That was rated an EF4, by the way. And then someone had drone video.
Yeah,
I happened to see online as it was going through the wind farm, which answered that question, Chris.
It did a number. I saw I saw his drone footage too. I was like, "Holy cow!"
Yeah, that thing was in business. Did you see the one in Altus last night?
Uh-uh.
That or what? No, the night before that.
Okay.
That thing was, but I was actually watching it on the radar, and I was doing the old gate to gate shear, addition thing, and I got about 200 on that storm. However, mind you, it was a little far away from the radar. Well, actually, not too far away, but it was over a rural area. And I don't know if you saw a picture. I mean, this thing was a wedge. It kind of looked like the one from Twister, to be quite honest with you.
Oh, wow.
EF2. Is that the only damage they could find was, it's just kind of like what happened with El Reno. I mean, it could have very well been a much stronger. I mean, I don't know if you saw that thing on radar. I was watching it. I was sitting here watching it and everything. I mean, it looked impressive on the radar.
Well, I know we had a little one in our local area the other night. So it would have been yesterday night before, and that went into Trenton where we have a subscriber, and it took off. They had to go into the basement, and it took off the Trenton, Nebraska. It was an E1. They did an E1 on it. It took off the roof of the stadium for the football field for the grandstands, and did some power lines and trees. And so that thing was, come out of Colorado, and then it marched across, overnight, and there was lots of activity overnight too. So just seems like even the days that are supposed to not be so severe are severe.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. All you need is the right, all you need is just honestly the right conditions. Doesn't even have to be widespread. I mean, it can just be so localized. That well, look what happened earlier this month in Oklahoma, and I was down there. There really wasn't much, but there was that one storm, that EF4 that went through that town. But everything else, there's a few. There really wasn't much. Side note.
3 of the 3 cells in that thing.
Yep, 3 brand new trigger warnings. The first one is going to be radar indicated. We talked about that one. Second one is also radar indicated. And the third one is also going to be radar indicated. But we are looking at an area here that is, really kind of in that atmosphere. We have 3 trigger warnings right up on each other. And again, my guess is there is enough wind shearing going on. Now, the returns are not all that impressive, relatively speaking. There is a notch right here. You can kind of see it for that first warn storm. Here's the second notch. And the third one is a little bit kind of out there, to be honest. And it's kind of right in this area on the radar scan. Is about the best indication. But my guess is, and I'm wondering if they're thinking that this guy's going to intensify more. It's trying to develop a clear inflow right here. There's still some of this in the way.
I think that, when you were going through your maps and I kind of was mentally layering them. That was the one, that area right there is kind of that Woodward, Oklahoma one was where the shear and all those values were kind of meeting. It was in that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing too. Hold on a second here, because I'm wondering if that's just that's a bounded echo region, but I mean it's kind of in a weird spot for that. Anyways, one other thing too. Oh, we can't forget about our guy down here. It looks like they're going to go ahead and not reissue that tornado warning at the moment. And that's going to be for the one down here right up on the Red River. Does have a little bit of that rotation, but I'll tell you, this storm was really looking good, Chris, right before you joined in. And something hit it. And it might, like I said, it might have been some of that outflow. And it's just been kind of struggling a little bit to get itself reorganized. What are your thoughts on that?
I wasn't paying much attention to it, but
that's all right.
again, it's a possibility. You've been watching it, so my guess is, it is down there at the end. So those are the ones that typically do like to have their own energy and keep going. So I wasn't paying attention, but it very well likely ran into some other activity there to the north.
Yeah,
Chris,
I mean,
I'm going to share my screen. I got a few images for you here. So down in Texas, the tornadoes that you were looking at a little bit earlier, Timmy, that's not going to load there. So here's one in Oklahoma that was getting ready to drop on the ground there about 5 minutes ago. And then over the Windhorse, Texas area, it's what you're talking about. You can kind of see on Twitter here.
That's a good looking one there.
Oh, yeah, that was the one that I'm trying to remember where Windhurst was. It was back over here.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can't find it, but it was this storm. If I remember correctly, right? No, I'm sorry. It was this one. I'm sorry. It was this one. It was the one that we were watching up here. That's now getting ready to cross the Red River. That's the one that you saw, that decent stovepipe looking thing.
Down by Wichita Falls. Yep.
Yeah. It was this guy, which just has really been struggling to recuperate itself. But I'm wondering though, what concerns me though is there's a lot of this little light rain here around Ardmore going back up to parts of OKC. And I'm wondering if that might be something that these storms are going to have troubles overcoming. Some of these storms fired up, but now they've kind of dissipated a bit. But it's still some of that cloud cover, some of that light rain, which I'm wondering if that might try to lower, the instability here across parts of southern Oklahoma. That's the only thing I'm wondering. And honestly, I guess this will be the storm to tell us.
Yeah. Yeah, you very well could be. If it's been raining out there. See what the surface maps look like there. Temperature difference is not seeing a lot yet, but dew points. Yeah, if it's been raining there, and what the satellite, I haven't been able to check the satellite real quick here.
We were looking at it earlier. There was a kind of a substantial amount of cloud cover.
out in front there. Yep.
Yeah, blowing over. So, and it makes me wonder if a lot of the activity may end up being
Up
here
to the north.
across Oklahoma.
Yep. I think that's where I'm just scanning things quick. I think that those ones in Oklahoma and that area kind of to the south a little bit of there between that, because
Like weather.
there's a lot of blowover just looking at the satellite on those two south ones.
Oh yeah.
Or earlier, and then now once you get past the Red River, those three areas of cells in Oklahoma. I'm going to look here where I'm walking to the satellite. So you got.
Do you have your screen up?
No, I'm looking at the satellite compared to the radar. So that Altus area up to the north. Between that Altus and those three warnings, kind of looks like the area there. There's not a lot of cloud cover. Things are heated up right there, and stuff pop. There's those two weather advisory things that
Yes.
could see those strengthening.
Yeah, and what's actually interesting about this one here in Altus,
3, 4.
if I were to loop this. This one was actually really interesting for those of you who like see here if I can't take a look at this thing. So let me start it again. So watch. So we had this outflow right here. This storm tried to fire up. It hit the outflow and just died. Then we saw a regeneration further back here, but this one's also still struggled a little bit. And so you can see this outflow. Just look at that thing. And so.
Oh, yeah.
And it just, that storm was probably itching to become something. And it just hit that outflow. And then you can see our guy down here. We had this stuff over Wichita Falls. So here was our strong storm. And I think the outflow hit that too. You can see how there was this guy right behind it, and that collapsed as it probably hit that outflow and knocked into this guy. Kind of a weird domino effect because, like I said, this was the guy that we were watching. I mean, it was looking really good. And then it tried to recuperate itself, but now I think it's running into this stuff. So take a look. You can see there it is, weakens, and it tries to re-intensify. And now it looks like it's starting to hit that. Because, I mean, all this is also falling apart. I'm wondering if maybe they fired up too early.
Yeah, possibility.
At least down here. Because this activity really brought in a lot of that cloud cover. I mean, because honestly, the temperature, I mean,
hasn't changed a lot.
So I'm thinking that, just based on what we're seeing over the past hour, this might not end up being that active. It might be areas north of Oklahoma City going into Kansas.
Yeah.
Where things could really be focusing in here. I mean, this guy is starting to get a bit better organized. I'm not 100% certain as to why 3 tornado warnings. I get that there are 3 different areas of rotation, but this top guy at the moment seems to be the strongest. Obviously, it's going to have to contend with this here briefly, but if it's the atmosphere out ahead hasn't really been touched, I think maybe this might try to, what do you call it? Do blob stuff.
The long tracker. Come a long track.
Yeah, this I think this might try to reorganize it would be either this part or this part. But I think this part's got a concern because of this. But there really isn't much down here. This is just, what is this? Just for wind and hail? Yeah, about golf ball size hail, which is considered small right now. You know. And this guy up here near Medicine Lodge, which honestly, I mean, that's certainly a hail producer.
Yeah.
It looks like it has a pretty good inflow. You see this right here. So it's certainly getting a good inflow. A little bit of a very faint notch. This, I don't know. But like I said, I'm looking at this. I mean, this storm is getting its inflow. And boy, what a mess, huh? Well, that's what happened when I was down in Iowa. I had 3 tornado warnings. I was, and every time my phone would go off, and it screwed up the live stream.
Those were spaced, about 60 miles apart, 4 of them, and they were 60. The slowest one was 55 mile an hour, and the fastest was 75 movement.
Yeah, that was
insane. I was like,
that was insane. I mean, that was.
There's no way to calculate, or the boxes. The warning boxes weren't matching,
and they were all long track tornadoes.
Yeah.
Because they were moving at 70 miles an hour. like seriously, they had an EF0 that went 12 miles.
Yeah.
So this one in the back here, like I said, it's you see it's starting to get itself together here a little bit. I worry about this, as it doesn't look like that there's a lot of room here for the inflow, but if this thing is able to, if it runs into it or something and, maybe clears it out afterwards, that could very well become something here. And I think, like I said, given the amount of shear, it might not have to be a classic setup per se with some of these. I think as long as there's some stuff there, if the amount of shear, it should be able to at least spawn something, even if it's brief.
Looks like they put us in that severe thunderstorm watch.
Oh, let's talk about that.
So
why don't you talk about it? Because that is your.
Yeah. So now up here in northwest Kansas, southwest Nebraska, the tri-state area, the severe thunderstorm watch has been issued from 6:25 p.m. here, last 10 minutes ago, until 1 a.m. And this is looking at this this cold front and the backside of this storm low pressure system with this activity out in northeastern Colorado. They're expecting that to develop with that activity that's in the north and west of North Platte back into Yuma County and down there into portions of there on I-70 around that Lyman area. So all that's going to be moving to the east as this storm activity out in central Kansas continues to fire here this evening. And so the counties included in that locally would be the counties on 36 from Yuma County all the way to the tornado warning in Phillips County. So that backs up to the tornado warning area and does include the severe thunderstorm warning that's now in place in the Hill City area. So that watch will go until 1 a.m., then all the way up into central Nebraska, including North Platte, Grand Island, and all the communities on Cornhusker Highway 34 and 36 from McCook, all the way to the Kearney, Hastings area there in Nebraska. So severe thunderstorm warnings covering all that stuff from Colorado through our local listening area on 36. So we'll watch that activity coming in this evening. And then the tornado watches, from Hayes, Russell, Kansas, all the way down into Wichita Falls, Texas, here this evening. So we got a large area. It includes where I'm at physically, and then where Timmy's covering down there south along the Red River, lining up here till midnight, 1 a.m.
That's right. And while we're at it, even my area is getting in on some of the activity, albeit not to the level they're seeing down in the plains. But why not? We'll talk about it here. Some showers and even some rumbles of thunder here happening actually where I am. A couple little storms making their way through. Maybe a little bit here of some light winds and maybe a little bit of hail up here. Obviously, temperature much cooler, so that freezing level not quite as high up there. So not unusual, I guess, to see little hail here with again, a little special includes the Iron River.
Timmy, your internet's cutting out on
kind
you.
of make it east. Just look it up here. But obviously, in the main area.
So we got as Timmy's kind of internet is cutting out here, I'll kind of pick up and continue the conversation. He was going up there into Minnesota where he was talking about storm activity there, and was kind of leaving us back here in Kansas. We got that new watch that's up in northwestern Kansas. Looks like Timmy came off here. See if we can get my radar up there. But anyway, we'll be waiting, see if we can get somebody to put my radar up, or if Timmy comes back on. But what we got going is we got that long line of storm activity that's now coming from, there we go. So we got the activity that we were talking about down here in Wichita Falls that would be kind of weakening a little bit because of some rain-cooled atmosphere out here. And then we've got these special weather statements out here around Oklahoma City into the southwest to keep an eye on. This is that dry line, an area of shear that could come in and intensify any of this activity here. This rain-cooled air here is kind of what we were talking about, it maybe limiting the severe capabilities some, and to focus on this area north of Oklahoma City and Ponca City, Ark City, the Wichita area, Winfield, and this thing here in Medicine Lodge. So that's we're particularly watching this cell to the north. Right now, it's we do have an observed on this one now. So that was the one that Timmy was given the rundown that was starting to show that notching and the potential one that could turn into an observed tornado and then do some long tracking here. So it has now been observed. This tornado warning will remain in effect until 7 p.m. And weather spotters confirmed a tornado located in the Bose Junction area. Tornado is on the ground in the Bose Junction area and is moving there to the east and northeast at about east at 40 miles per hour. So it's 6 miles north of Chester, moving east at 40 miles per hour in the Bose Junction area. So that is now an observed tornado. And we'll kind of zoom in on that one. See if we can get a Wichita radar here, if that's a little better. But now this cell here, get our communities oriented. So we do have an observed tornado. It's kind of rural there, north of Highway 46 or 68. There's Presso. Where's this Bosch Junction? So, but that is the area right in here that we're kind of keeping an eye on, an observed tornado. This area is under a warning with an observed tornado until 7 p.m. So that would be in that Bosch Junction area, crossing highways 412, in that Cleo Springs area, back to here's Winoka, where 412 and 281 intersect. So we'll be watching that cell there. It's got an observed tornado on the ground. Okay, there's Timmy.
I'm back. Sorry.
Okay, well that top cell got an observed tornado on it while you were gone.
Yes, right as I was getting ready to talk to it, of course, the internet had to go out. Yeah, there it is. But it looks like it might not be on the ground for too much longer, just based on. Let me pull up my radar here. Well, we can keep yours up, but I just want to get it up here. Sorry, I'll put yours back up. The problem I'm seeing with it, though, is that it looks like the inflow is being cut off at the moment. But, it might be able to recover from that, hopefully, given the environment. Is it still on the ground? Do you happen to know? I know that it was on the ground right before I cut out. So it's the inflow has been cut out a little bit. It's still certainly rotating, but it might take a few minutes for it to maybe clear itself out here and re-get itself organized, if that's the proper term. Because I'm looking at it here on the velocities on my end, and it really looks like it is kind of dropped down a little bit, compared to what it was a few moments ago here. I'll show you what you've been talking about here. Let me get this thing to maybe loop here. And it was right about there. And then it looks like the inflow has been cut off by that little storm down here that I was talking about. Now, it's possible that once the storm finishes merging in, we can get that to maybe, clear back out. My only concern is I'm wondering if there might be a little bit of an outflow problem. But even if this might struggle, I'm still very interested in this part right down here, south of Fairview. We'll see what that storm tries to do. Also, they've issued a kind of a big severe thunderstorm warning for Enid, and this goes up to Grant County, Oklahoma. Yes, I believe that is, Grant County here. Let me double check. It's going to be, Garfield County, Grant County, Noble, and Alfalfa County. This is going to be for 70-mile-an-hour winds, so at the moment, this is kind of a straight line type of wind situation. I will also say, while we're on it, we've talked about it a couple times. We haven't focused on it a lot. But, this Medicine Lodge one is also, doing fairly well for what it has to work with. Unfortunately, there's still some of this precipitation in the way. We'll see here, though, if the storm, is able to, kind of compensate for this a little bit. It did have what looked to be a little bit of rotation, but that rotation has since kind of gone down as this precipitation has kind of ran into the inflow. So it'll be interesting to see here, Chris, if, this also manages to maybe recover a little bit. But I do have concerns for this storm, given some of this activity right back here. But we'll see what it does. I mean, this storm has been holding out, hasn't had the best stuff to work with yet, but certainly is still holding on. Now, interestingly, I don't know if you saw or not, but they did reissue that Trento warning right down here on the Red River for that storm. And, interestingly, this storm is looking a lot better. And it's still radar indicated, Chris. But I'll tell you what, this is the one that dropped that tornado that Michael was showing the picture of back over here around the Windhurst area. It looked like it ran into that rain-cooled air a little bit, and then it's kind of regrouped itself. We were thinking that it was really struggling, but it looks like it might have finally gotten out of that air mass with that rain-cooled air, and it looks like it might be trying to cycle back up again. And right now, it's kind of like I said, it's getting ready to cross the Red River. Still kind of a rural area, but it will be coming up potentially on Ardmore, Oklahoma, which is right off of I-35. It's going to be staying north of Thackerville. I say that because I've been there. I've been through that town before. And that's where we had those tornadoes back at the end of April. You'll remember they had that tornado event. They had an F4 that tracked right around the Thackerville area. So this storm at the moment appears it'll be staying way north of that, but it could be coming up on the Ardmore area. And this has been kind of a long-tracked supercell. It has had a history of producing at least a couple tornadoes, albeit maybe not the strongest in tornado history, but still enough. We did see a couple pictures of it. It's got the rotation, and it seems like it might be trying to get itself better organized now. I mean, it's been looking pretty good here. So that tornado warning is in effect. Again, right now, that warning goes until about another 45 minutes. The storm is moving northeast at about 35 miles an hour. So what we're going to do here really quickly, I'm going to turn off the warnings. And I'm going to time track the rotation part, not the rest of the precipitation. But we are going to, in this track, I do want to bring it up to include Ardmore. And I'm going to set its speed at about 40 miles an hour just to give it a little bit of lead time here. And that could be putting it up in Ardmore here, maybe in the next hour. A little bit closer, places like Bellevue, about 15 minutes. Petersburg, about 15 minutes too. Turner, about 30 minutes, 35 minutes. And let's see here, Greenville in about 50 minutes or so. Again, that's taking the track a little bit to the north and to the east here, but I wanted to make sure to include Ardmore in that, just, as they will be getting probably some precipitation from this. I mean, if nothing else, they might be getting at least some hail. We'll see how this storm tracks there. But yeah, again, very interested in, again, this storm I've been watching. Still radar indicated at the moment, but it does have that rotation, and it is a lot better organized now than it was a few radar scans ago.
Okay. I'm sitting here getting updates from the track meet and watching that storm in that Medicine Lodge area with its movement could be something that we need to keep an eye on, like you're talking about down there for Ardmore. Same thing for that Anthony, south of Keeneman area, heading towards Wichita here over the next hour or two. If we continue to have movement on that one and kind of the indices and parameters we were talking about earlier, that cell just on north of the Kansas line could be one to keep an eye on as well. We've got some pretty good outflow in that area, some pretty good storm movement on it, but right now it doesn't have. Did look like it was a good hail producer for a while. It's weakened a little bit in these last couple of frames, but again, it's a supercell kind of out there by its own, and the environment's favorable for that one. Keep an eye on it as it heads towards Wichita.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were talking about that kind of cluster of storms that we have in northern Oklahoma near the Woodward area. There was obviously that severe thunderstorm warning that's in effect that includes Enid, but the storm down to the south here of this cluster. So we got this cluster with 3 active warnings on it right now. This one did have a confirmed tornado a little bit ago, but that has since gone away. It just really had a hard time of it. This middle one, I'm not really quite sure why that warning is really still there. There might be a little bit of a notch, but again, just radar indicated, more so for hail at this point. But this one around Fairview, it's the southern part of it here, of that cluster. It's a little bit more open. It's starting to develop a little bit here of a hook. It doesn't look like at the moment there's anything on the ground with this, but I think it's certainly rotating, and it may have the potential here to maybe get itself a bit organized here over the next 15 or so minutes. Side note, because why not? Flash flood warning is in effect now for pretty much wherever this cluster is. And that's going to be for at least about another 3 hours. So that does include Helena. It includes Ringgold and Enid, Oklahoma, where there is a model train museum or something like that there. Fun fact about Enid. Yeah, Enid, Oklahoma. Decent-sized town, actually. So it's kind of the population center up around for those couple counties there. So yeah, that southern storm, that Fairview one, definitely worth watching too. I'll put your radar back up here as I continue to scan the storm coming up on the Red River.
So I've been kind of watching this stuff back in northwest Kansas. This is where I am working from here this evening. We've got these storms out ahead on the warm front, and the frontal line, and then the cold dry line here, and then these outflows coming in off the storms and the activity coming in from Colorado. So we're going to see storms pop up in this area, mostly along 36, where you have the air coming in behind it, and there's a little more instability on these counties than up here in Nebraska. So these pop up here east of Colby, just east of where I am here in Rawlins County, in that McCook area. We'll keep an eye on this activity of possibly becoming severe with 1-inch hail and wind gusts to 60 mile an hour. And then this cold front back here also moving in later this evening. Looking at this activity around Wichita, which we were talking about, we got state track going on there. Proud of our family, has got one senior and 2 juniors there racing today, and we've got a state title winner in 100 and 300 hurdles, broke a meet record that was held since 1999 on one of them, and then looks like we're going to go 9 events and should have 9 medals in all 9 events. So we're kind of proud of that. I'm getting my phones blowing up in text. So as you hear that, I just asked them to see how long they will be out there tonight, and watch this activity here in Medicine Lodge, because that movement on that would definitely could end up in this Derby, Wichita area, southern parts of the city there. So watching that, we got this mess that Timmy just run down out here. Looks like the tornado warnings have dropped off those. Is that correct there?
We'll check here.
Definitely looks like on my radar here. So where that flood area was, those storms kind of worked into that area, and now are severe thunderstorm warnings in that area where it's already rained significantly. And they're expecting a lot more rain out of this activity here.
Yeah, they canceled the tornado warnings on that cluster, as you mentioned. I still do have some interest, though, in the Fairview portion of that cluster. Again, right now, still looks like it might be trying to get itself a bit better organized. It's the southern section there of that cluster. A little bit of a hook here. Again, it still looks like it has a little ways to go. The Medicine Lodge one, Chris, I'm thinking as I'm looking at this one, it looks like it handled that rain pretty well. As good as it could. I am noticing on the velocities. I'm going to steal screen. Okay, you got it up there. It looks like on the SRM here, it looks like it's starting that kind of low level notch is starting to return a little bit, just southwest of. I'm trying to. What is that? Gillane? Basically, right up on US 281. As a matter of fact, I'm going to steal the radar here really quickly. Right here, and it looks like it may have handled that okay. That rain, coming in here, it might be trying to get itself worked right back up. But this is the area right here that I'm keeping an eye on. That notch has kind of reappeared a little bit, and there we go. So again, nothing imminent at the moment. But it's certainly severe thunderstorm warning criteria with that hail up to the north there. But I'm curious if we're going to see this thing maybe trying to get a bit better organized. I'll tell you what, the Fairview section, man, what a warning mess this has turned into, huh? Look at this.
Yeah,
You get a warning. You get a warning. Everyone gets a warning. This is the one around Fairview. Again, it's got a little bit of that hook there starting to show back up. Like I said, this thing might be trying to, maybe in the next, like I said, maybe, like I said, the next 15 minutes or so might be something we'll have to talk about more. I'm also looking at the one down around the Red River. It still has that hook a little bit. Now we're getting a little bit far away from the radar scans, unfortunately. So the image not quite as clear, but from what I can still see, it's still got that notch right there. It still has a little bit of that hook. And like I said, I'm keeping an eye on this as it might be trying to track its way towards Ardmore or the vicinity of the Ardmore area here in the next half hour.
Okay. So we kind of got a pretty good rundown there, watching these areas, kind of the three different areas. We got the Wichita Falls, Ardmore, the Enid area, the Medicine Lodge area, and then in a severe thunderstorm warning watch area back in north central Kansas, northwestern Kansas. That activity that's in the Hill City, Phillipsburg area, north of Hayes, has thunderstorm warnings in place until 7:30, we're keeping an eye on that. That track meet in Wichita, they're in the 4x400s right now, and they should be wrapping it up within an hour or so. I'm getting questions in Weather Valet about, and on my cell phone here about traveling home. So folks would be northwest of Kansas. People in western Kansas would be traveling north out of Wichita tonight, and that area is in a tornado watch area through the evening and overnight. So definitely something to keep your weather radios on and stay alert as you're traveling back, because there could be storm activity between Wichita and Salina in a couple of hours as well. So we'll keep an eye on that, and that's kind of a rundown of what's going on. I think we talked about that meet in Wichita. It's the entire state, all classes. So there's going to be people leaving there going every which direction tonight. And
yeah, and I'll tell you what too. I don't know if you've seen yet or not. The sounding, they released a special sounding from Dodge City. If you care to see it, I'll put it up here for you, Chris. For those of you watching, this is just so Chris can see. We won't go into the hardcore details, but here's a sounding from about from 20Z here. So that would have been about 3 o'clock, I believe, Central Time. There you go. And then whenever you finish that, I'm sorry?
Where's some of the severe weather parameters reading? I can't see.
Supercell 0, left supercell 0.2, significant tornado parameter 0, and same thing with hail. Now, mind you, this was a little bit ago. This is before everything's set up, but I just figured I'd show you that because at least the upper level sounding part is still probably.
Yep.
And then I want to show you while we're at it here, and then I do want to mention that Medicine Lodge storm here. This is this came from Dallas. This was about 4 o'clock. Here's some of the parameter numbers for you there. Supercell 20.5, left supercell 14, significant tornado, both effective and fixed layer is about 5, and significant hail 2.3. And you can just see the wind shear. This is what I was talking about earlier. Surface wind shear, or surface winds and upper level winds. I mean, that is a really tight, a really kind of impressive wind shear value. I do want to go back to the Medicine Lodge storm here. It is, starting to get a little bit it might, like I said, it's starting to get a little bit, maybe a little bit more organized here. Again, not at the moment where I'd say there's anything imminent, but we've seen over the past few scans here that it's starting to get this low level rotation back. There is a little bit of a notch there. It's held out. It held out that collision there pretty good. Unfortunately, can't really say the same for the Fairview section. It's still a little bit there. At the moment, though, nothing that screams imminent. But that Medicine Lodge storm, I think, we'll definitely be watching and keeping an eye here on that one crossing the Red River. Like I said, it's looking pretty decent. I haven't seen any reports yet. But, I mean, it could very well be close here. Let me double check. There is a report of a wall cloud actually on that. There's a report of a wall cloud on that one crossing the Red River, but other than that, nothing else. So that would be the hook there. I'll put your radar back up so you can see. I just wanted to show you those skew tees, but
Okay.
Sorry, you were talking about Medicine Lodge. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, I was just kind of looking at that Medicine Lodge numbers. So we've been talking about this area here. Kind of see this little notch forming as it's going across 281. Again, that's the cell that we're kind of watching for the state track meet. I just got messages that, they're going to be leaving there shortly in an hour or so. And folks will be heading back. A lot of people will be going back towards, the 6A schools, 5A schools are over here on the east and north. They'll be driving right into this stuff. Severe weather, if you're going south, Dark City, this way to Anthony, you'll be going into it. And as well as anybody, to go anywhere west in Kansas, you have to go back up to Salina and pretty much down the interstate. So that's probably going to be clear. It's just getting to Salina over the next 2-3 hours. So definitely pay attention, maybe get supper, stay a little bit longer, or alter your travel plans a little bit, or at least plan on altering them to stay out of the hail and out of the potential tornado activity here the next couple of hours until it crosses 135 from Salina to Wichita.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add to that is that that whole 160, that whole stretch of US 160, probably over the next hour, might not be the best travel. Around that area leading out to Medicine Lodge, there it just seems like that's right where that thing would track over. And and it's not even so much the travel probability, is it would also just be the hail. Yeah. I mean, doesn't have to be big. You don't have to have a big hail, but I mean, once you start getting up to golf ball size hail, that starts cracking some windshields and making it pretty difficult to drive. And typically, that's also generally followed by at least a good deal of precipitation too. Of rain. So it's not, and especially it'll be getting dark soon. Like I said, this. I mean, I'm just looking at it on my end here too. I mean, this Medicine Lodge storm really wants to. It just seems like it's very slowly, which is interesting, based on some of the conditions that are around. That it's kind of slowly, kind of organizing itself here rather than a little bit quicker. But that being said, that hook feature is still kind of showing up there a little bit, and there is some of that rotation there. Unfortunately, our Fairview storm has really just kind of lost itself. I think there's still a little bit there, but at the moment, boy, it's just having a hard time. I do want to point out while we're at it, too, we mentioned earlier there are a few storms across western Oklahoma at the moment that have, tried firing up. Unfortunately, they've really struggled. Oh, you don't have my radar up. Let me get my radar. Here I am talking about stuff and no one can see what I'm talking about. We mentioned this a little bit ago that, there was that storms moved through. Not the best air mass. Unfortunately, the outflows, kind of cut off what might have been a potentially decent storm, to be quite honest with you. It just completely destroyed it, and it's gone. We saw a little storm fire back up. Unfortunately for that little storm, I don't think it's been enough to recover itself. Dew points heading into the Clinton area of Oklahoma are in the lower 60s, so not necessarily the best type of environment here. So it really is looking like that that activity that happened really might have just shut things off down around Frederick and Lawton, potentially for the rest of the evening. Whereas in it seems like the activity is now focused mainly north of I-40, more so around the Enid and Wichita area as we've been tracking. And, of course, the supercell that's kind of hanging its way down around the Ardmore area in Oklahoma. Now, unfortunately, at the moment, the Ardmore storm, a little hard to see it on the radar. It's a little bit far away. It did have a little bit of a hook feature there. There was a couple reports of a wall cloud, but we haven't got anything about a tornado yet. Still a pretty healthy supercell. Even if this thing doesn't produce any more tornadoes, at least the way it looks right now is it's still going to be producing some hail. Right now, potentially upwards of about golf ball size hail. And that could be coming up on Ardmore depending upon exactly how this thing tracks. So regardless, it's still going to get a little bit thundery and lightning there, and there will probably be at least some type of hail there. But whether there's tornadic probability at the moment, still a little uncertain. Might be just trying to recycle again, but it is interesting how it did kind of uptick a little bit as it neared there, which shows that the atmosphere does at least the thing is the conditions are there for the most part that if these storms can fire up and get good, they can rotate. And we've seen that a couple times already with some of these storms as they fire up. And we saw that mess back up around the Enid area, which had kind of 3 areas of rotation at one point. But I think that part of the issue is that this activity may have fired up a little bit early in some spots. Regardless, there's some of these storms are so big that the outflow that they're producing, the rain-cooled air that they're producing, is interfering with other storms' ability, which is kind of what we're seeing a little bit maybe around the Enid area now is that they, have the potential. They still do, especially that one. I don't want to give up hope yet on the Fairview one, but it's not looking so good. But it's just very hard to get a tornado to develop if you're dealing with heavy rain-cooled air as opposed to the warm moisture that hasn't really been touched. Now, again, we look at this Fairview storm right here, which again is a pretty decent-sized thunderstorm, but unfortunately, there's all this stuff up here in front of it, which could very well later on here pose a really big problem for this thunderstorm. All of this is trying to run on ahead of this guy here at Medicine Lodge. So the question is, are we going to be able to see this Medicine Lodge storm, continue to intensify? And as mentioned, we're looking at it here on the radar. There is a gradual increase here in this low-level rotation we've seen over about the past 15 minutes or so. But now we got this guy down here coming up on Burlington, which could start to, limit the time that this guy has. So it's turning into one of these situations, which unfortunately we've seen severe weather-wise, that there's just so much activity. It's not good. Too many members in the band. One of these can be Yoko, I guess. Little Beatles reference there for you. I'm a big Beatles fan. But what I'm saying though is I think some of these storms have really shown that the atmosphere is good. But like anything, a supercell needs a little bit of time to get itself organized, and some of these storms have been having problems doing it. This Medicine Lodge one that Chris and I have been, that Chris has been talking about, especially as it comes up on the Wichita, it starts getting closer to Wichita, has really been doing good. I mean, this guy's been around for about 2 hours, but it just keeps getting hit. And it took a pretty decent hit, but it survived it, which again is a good indication that this atmosphere is certainly capable of sustaining long track thunderstorms or long track supercells, which, under slightly more or less congested conditions would certainly favor more long track tornadoes. But there's just so much activity around and running back into each other. It's been a little bit of a problem, but I will say some of the scans on this coming up on Hazleton, again, At the moment, I wouldn't say there's anything imminent, but it certainly has that low-level rotation there. It's not exactly what I would consider tight, but it is there. I mean, this storm has a good inflow at the moment. Here it is. Like I said, this guy is trying. You can say what you want about that thunderstorm, but you don't call it a quitter. This guy is really kind of kept on going. We also have, like I said, this guy now forming up back here, and it'll be interesting to see how this one responds. It might try to maybe get a little bit of rotation with it. Unfortunately for the Medicine Lodge storm is that this guy could be running into it maybe in the next hour. So might not have a lot of time to work with. Same thing for our Fairview section of the storm. That's kind of lost itself a little bit. And really right now, kind of our main guy has been this supercell all by itself. All by itself, yay. But there hasn't been a lot of activity down around this area to interfere with the storm. So that's kind of what we're talking about when we say that, supercells kind of like to be by themselves. They don't have to be the only one, but they like to have at least a little bit of breathing room. And so far, Chris, this has been the strongest one. This has been the one that's produced at least a couple of tornadoes, and you'll notice it's generally by itself. Unfortunately, for areas of Oklahoma between I-40 and the rest of the Red River is that too many storms fired up early, and it just cast that cloud cover over, and it stabilized at least probably some of the lower levels, and we're just seeing these storms just need a little bit of a push. If there was a little bit of a push mechanism, Chris, I'm sure you'd agree, this would probably be I don't want to say a record-breaking tornado outbreak, but this would certainly be an active evening. But it just seems like there's just been so much activity that
it's all running into everything, yeah. And we're starting to, like you said, up there in that Enid, Ponca City, Medicine Lodge, Anthony area, kind of the same things happening there. It's just lots of strong, severe storms are all popping up and maybe robbing each other as they run into each other there. So kind of what happened down there where between Ardmore and in the Oklahoma City area could be also happening as it moves towards Ponca City, Ark City, and Wichita as well. So that's what we're kind of, it's lots of warnings there, all multiple directions and all kind of targeting in on that Wellington, Ponca City, Wichita area.
And unfortunately for
heavy rain.
Oh, sorry. No, go ahead. Please go ahead.
Heavy rain and hail, though.
Yes. As has been the case this year. Interestingly, I'm trying to, on my end, we had that one storm that produced quite a bit of hail before you joined in. Interestingly, the only hail report we got from that southern storm right along the Red River was only about 1 3/4 of an inch. The biggest hail we've gotten reported was about that 3-inch, and that came from this guy that we were tracking. But yeah, these guys are easily still producing some pretty decent hail. And like I said, I mean, here we go. Here's kind of an example of what we were just talking about. We got one little supercell, two little, we got these two supercells, which, given this environment would, are developing kind of as you would expect. The problem is that there's all this other activity around and it keeps getting run into. And, this, I think right now, aside from the one down in, coming up on our, and just look at that. There we go. So we got that radar indicated now. Hey, Chris, take a look at this. It's the Medicine Lodge one. It's managed to get itself together right over Hazleton. It doesn't look like at the moment there's anything on the ground, but I'll tell you what, the storm is running on borrowed time because this guy's quickly approaching from Burlington, but it could maybe try. What do you think?
Yeah. So there is a tornado warning that has been issued for that Anthony area for the next 44 minutes. And it's a radar indicated rotation there, right in that Hazleton area, moving to the east at let's see here, it's probably, I'm guessing 40 mile an hour like the other storms we've been seeing. So we've got a tornado warning for Harper County in south central Kansas until 8 p.m. 7:15, a severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado was located near Hazleton, making an east-northeast movement at 40 miles per hour. This would be a potential tornado and golf ball size hail. So if you're in that Hazleton area and then eventually moving towards Danville, Corwin, Freeport, Bluff City, and Crystal Springs, as it moves off towards Anthony there, you could see the potential for a tornado and that golf ball size hail. We'll keep an eye on that cell. Like Timmy was saying, there's that activity to the south of it that would be potentially robbing that area that we're starting to see the rotation and what has issued the tornado warning that now includes a good chunk of Harper County and working its way into that Harper, Kansas area, Anthony, Kansas area around 7:45, and then you'll keep an eye on it where it goes from there if it continues to that area south of Wichita. So if you're traveling south out of Wichita, southeast or east, definitely we need to keep an eye on these cells. We got severe thunderstorm warnings. There's definitely 1-inch hail to 2-inch hails, and then it's issued a tornado warning now from Hazleton moving northeast towards Anthony, Kansas.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, it put it in Anthony probably within the next 30 minutes or so if it continues on this track. Now, as I've mentioned, not to get people ahead of this thing, really worked up, but I mean, this storm, it's kind of on borrowed time a little bit, and you'll have to see here how this thing's able to track, because it's got not only the storm coming out of Burlington, but also the storm coming up in Bluff City that could eventually interfere a little bit with it. But for the moment, I'm going to flip off the warnings here really quickly so we can kind of just see the storm for what it is. Get rid of that. This is the SRM here, Chris, and you can see it here. It's really, as soon as it loads, come on, you can do it. There it is. It almost looks like a yin-yang.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's got this problem right here around Burlington. So, like I said, we'll see what this thing is able to do here. But I'd say Corwin, too. Corwin coming up here in just a few moments, certainly is a potential here. We could see this thing maybe drop a tornado. The question is that if it does, how long would it be able to last? This hard to see it, but right here looks to be the outflow boundary from this Burlington storm. So that's it.
It's going to suck right into it there around that Corwin area.
Yeah. There's your inflow. That could help enhance it briefly. Because it might try tightening in this inflow notch right here. This is there's your inflow.
We just had a big gust front come through here, shake my roof.
Ooh.
One of those outflows.
Any good winds?
I'm guessing when my roof starts creaking like that, it's usually 40, 45. So.
Heck yeah. Tropical storm.
And I can see the big tree going and bending. So go back up to the northwest Kansas radar. What I was just talking about is you can see this outflow boundary right here in Atwood. That's what just came through and was sort of shaking the roof here. These cells, we're in a severe thunderstorm watch. So we'll keep an eye on these outflows as this cold front starts working in. It's back here from Ray to the Hayes Center area. Right now, they got special weather statements on them. These cells that are talking about gusty winds upwards to 50 miles an hour and a half-inch type hail. And that's probably very similar to what just went through along this outflow boundary. So anywhere along this outflow boundary south of Atwood to Colby, we could see some storms popping up here in the next 10, 15, 20 minutes. So what it takes to build a thunderstorm, and then moving off to the northeast. Right now, we're not going to warning level with these. That would be the watch has potential for 2-inch hail, 70-mile-an-hour winds if these storms intensify as they move into Nebraska, up towards that Hastings, Kearney, Grand Island area, to the north and east of McCook along Cornhusker Highway. But they're going to fire right on Highway 25. That's where the kind of dry air line is. Watch does include Ray, all the communities along 36 to Phillipsburg, and then north upwards here in Nebraska, North Platte, Kearney, Holdridge, and all the way up going to the northeast there in Nebraska. So right now, 50-mile-an-hour winds, nickel-size hail. With any of this activity that pops up here around Atwood, we do have alumni going on here in Atwood. So those of you that have been popping in and on, trying to watch the weather on the phones, the banquet's going on right here in town. The dance is outside, so we're going to be dealing with this wind now. Hopefully these thunderstorms will move around us, and we'll be able to enjoy the rest of the band and all the socializing into 1, 2 o'clock in the morning once this stuff gets out of here. But right now, we are in a severe thunderstorm watch area, Highway 36, north into Nebraska until 1 a.m. So that's what's going on back here. And what we just heard move through Atwood, Kansas. And then back down to Wichita, we go with that tornado. Is it still radar indicated? Yes, it is. So,
Yeah.
Pretty good.
It's tightening up. That's all I had to say. It's tightening up, but I don't know if it has much time left.
And we got, the same thing, all these storms out around it in front. We're starting to see, same thing happening up here north of Wichita. Lots of storm activity developing. How strong it will get, how it will track is going to be kind of determined here over the next 30 minutes to an hour, what this is going to look like as it moves through Wichita, through Ponca City, Newton, some of those areas that saw that severe weather when we had the derecho outbreak there. Was it last Thursday? Can't even remember now. Or this earlier this week.
I think it would have been last week. No.
It was Monday.
Good. I can't even remember. Normally, I'm good with that kind of stuff. I can't remember.
Sunday night. Because
that's Monday,
right. Yep. We started Sunday night this week, so.
Yeah, because then I was down in Iowa earlier. That's right. That was this. Wow. This week's been long.
Almost a week ago.
Time flies. I'm just watching that storm, that Medicine Lodge storm. The rotation is right over Corwin. But like I said, it's struggling. Well, it's struggling for time. It's a really good-looking storm. But, that other storm getting ready to run into it. Meanwhile, yeah. That's a little burst of wind down around Enid, but they also issued. I'll put up my radar here really quickly. They did issue. Oh, let me put my radar up. The severe thunderstorm warning on that lone little thunderstorm way out there in rural Oklahoma near Carnegie. This is south of Clinton. Is this severe thunderstorm warning on it for the potential for about 1-inch size hail? So just kind of a borderline severe thunderstorm. This has been that guy. It's tracking. It's by itself, but doesn't have the best atmosphere to work with, unfortunately, as it was kind of depleted by that rain-cooled air mass from those storms that we saw fire up earlier on. We also have the tornado warning has been reissued or extended, and it now is going to include, let's see, some counties up here for people. Love County and Carter County in Oklahoma. Again, a little hard to see it on the radar, but this is the notch right here that we are keeping an eye on. Like I said, it's starting to rain now in Ardmore. The storm appears to be taking a little bit of a east-northeasterly track. So the heaviest of the precipitation itself might also stay just south of Ardmore. But regardless, going to be coming right up on I-35 here, probably around the Marietta area here shortly. You see, the storm is moving about 40 miles an hour. We'll just take the rotation part of it. So, yes, there's precipitation way out ahead of this. So what we're timing here is the rotation aspect of it. And that's going to be putting it up here in Marietta in about 25 minutes or so. Crossing I-35 in about 25 minutes or so. Definitely will be a storm to kind of keep watching. Also, new severe thunderstorm warning for this lone guy way back down here, kind of by itself, making its way into Windhurst, just warned for some hail and maybe some gusty winds, kind of marginal on both of those criteria here. Going back to our main storm up here in Medicine Lodge, this is it. Again, looks kind of decent. Still has that clear inflow at the moment. We take a look at the velocities on it. There's a second to load here. There it is. Those are some good velocities. We've had a couple wall cloud reports, but nothing yet on the ground. My guess here, though, is that even if there's nothing on the ground, there's very defined wall cloud, maybe even a little funnel trying to stick out. But unfortunately, as soon as it tightens up, it's now starting to kind of untighten a bit because this rain is kind of running into it now here. I'm looking at it here. A few things here. I just want to see if there's any, drop-offs or what have you on the, if we got anything here, any debris signature, but I don't think so. Potentially, no, it's on the wrong side. Yeah, Chris, it's rotating, but I don't think anything's on the ground at this exact moment, but that might change, but it just ran into it.
Yeah, there's a lot of action around there, kind of taking the energy. We'll keep an eye on it, though. It's kind of been the cell that has been showing the most strength out of that area prior to running into this batch coming from the south.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a really, it's, from a thunderstorm perspective, it's kind of a shame. I mean, this guy has been holding out pretty steadily for, I don't know, probably at least the past hour and a half. I mean, it survived that hit from that other shower, but this one may be a little bit of a match for it. Not only that, but even if it does survive that, it's still got all this stuff over here it's going to probably have to deal with shortly. So, yeah, but given the atmosphere, it's still a possibility it could produce something, but goodness golly, that storm it's been going, but it's been struggling as it just keeps getting hit. The other strong storm is the one that's a bit more isolated. This too has been a long track supercell. In fact, this has been the one that really we probably talked about. And part of the reason why it's doing so well is because it's by itself. There's not much activity running into it at the moment. The nearest storm is one that developed after it already passed through, and that's way down in Windhurst. So this guy's kind of by itself a little bit. Still radar indicated rotation. It is a little far away from the radar site at the moment. But, it's still holding out, and I think it still bears watching. That's all I had on my end. I'll put your radar back up.
Okay. So I'm kind of out here just waiting to get some text in here about this stuff in northwest Kansas. So what we got is, like when we left off, we were watching these outflow boundaries popping up here and these special little weather statements on these cells. So here in Rawlins County, in Decatur County over in Oberlin. We're looking kind of watch this little cell to the north and west of east of Achilles on the county line. That is kind of a cell, super cell out by its own. And then this one to the north of that would be crossing 25 areas to the west. Here we got nickel-sized hail, 50-mile-an-hour wind gusts in those areas. This watch does feel there's potential that these could strengthen and have upwards to 2-inch hail and wind gusts to 70 if they strengthen as they moved off to the north and east. Right now, Atwood itself, Colby, kind of behind this burst of wind that we just saw go through. The sun's popping out again. We'll keep an eye. If we don't see any development in this area, and watching this stuff out in Colorado probably moves off to the north and east some here. We may be pushing this stuff past us and more of a threat up here in Lexington, Holdridge, North Platte, Kearney, and those areas when it goes into Nebraska. So right now, the immediate threat, is near in the county. Right now, it's below the severe thunderstorm warning criteria, but special weather statements do indicate that we could have 50-mile-an-hour wind gusts and nickel-sized hail and some heavy rainfall as this moves through Oberlin, Trenton, Culbertson, those places that saw some of the tornadic and large hail activity just the other night. So that's what's going on back here. Back down into Wichita, we've been talking about the Anthony storm. Track meet is now ending, and folks will be leaving there to state track meet. So anything going south and east or south and west on 56 down to Arc City, those areas probably need to wait for this activity to pass. Got a tornado warning in the Harper County areas, almost all of Harper County except the north end, and then which does include Anthony, Harper, Attica, and then we got severe thunderstorm warnings in place all the way south of Wichita through Wellington, Winfield, Arc City, Caldwell. Watching the stuff to the north, but most of this activity is to the west and southwest of Wichita, moving northeast at 40 miles per hour. So we'd be looking at the Wichita area in that 8 o'clock, around that 8 o'clock time frame to 8:30. We could see some storms in southwestern parts of Wichita.
Yeah, speaking of that Medicine Hill storm, nothing else. They're getting some pretty gusty winds on the backside of that thing. I mean, there's I'll pull up my radar here. Take a look at this, Chris. I was looking at it while you were doing your roundup here, and a couple of 80s, couple of 80 notches there. So certainly, man, this certainly got the mechanism. Storm's certainly healthy. I guess I should say that right here is what we're talking about. It's coming right up on US 2 here. I mean, like I said, this storm is rotating. Even after that hit, Chris, this thing is still rotating pretty good. And actually, if I back it up here just a little bit, I want to show you here. You notice there was a little couplet right there. I was watching it right there. See it? A little notch there that it, maybe a little funnel cloud or something there. I didn't see anything I didn't see any debris signature or anything, and honestly, no one probably saw anything because it's so heavy rain wrapped. But it held there. I thought it was just very interesting. It held itself for about 2 little scans right there. You see it?
Yes. So
a little notch there, but unfortunately, it's no longer there. Still radar indicated, but I'll tell you what, though, on the backside here, it's about maybe some good 60-mile-an-hour winds at the surface here, whipping right over Highway 2. We'll see here, though. I mean, Chris, it looks like to me this storm is not giving up. Is not giving up yet. I mean, it's taken in this storm. My opinion is that it's it might have lost its rotation at the surface a bit, but it's still got that mesocyclone there. Even as I'm just trying to see, I want to look a little higher up here on my end. I'm not going to show it, but take a look here. That mesocyclone is still there, higher up in the storm. So this guy is still kicking. Pretty good.
Just kind of sitting back here and looking at it. That thing could go right over Anthony. Something to watch there, that rotation, and as it's taking in that other storm, it is. It'd be interesting to see what these next two radar jumps do, but to see what happens there between that Anthony and Harper area as it pulls in that other storm and continues, that rotation in there.
I mean, that says a lot about the atmosphere. Even though there's so much activity going on, I still think it's impressive that this guy is still maintaining that, despite all these collisions. I think that says something at least about some of the upper level dynamics going on, I think had there not been all these collisions, this guy probably could have been producing a pretty decent sized tornado.
Yeah, sorry there. I've been distracted.
Oh, you're fine.
On my phone a little bit. Whoops. Get myself off here. But as what we're looking at, got your radar up, okay?
I'll put yours up.
Is this area, moving over Anthony Harper, pulling in this severe thunderstorm activity out ahead of it. Be interesting here, watch this as this fills and how this tornado warning holds together. Again, it's been radar indicated, large hail. We show an indication that the winds could be gusting 60 to 80 miles per hour as it's moving over Highway 2. And again, it's in that south of that Attica area, right in here. So this is what we're talking about. Tornado warning. Still showing some pretty good punch here on the radar, even as it's taking in those other storms that are around it. Going north of Wichita, stuff is not really firing up. The stuff, that Wichita area, south to Ponca City, kind of seems to be the area we're focusing on, and then some stuff that's back to the north here in Kansas. Up in the long highways 36 and 24, up there in Phillipsburg area, Beloit, Concordia. That's kind of the north or the south end of that severe thunderstorm watch that is encompassing most of Nebraska, or at least central Nebraska, south central Nebraska until 1 a.m. We do got tornado watches in place in this area from Hutchinson to Wichita, downwards to Oklahoma City till 9 p.m. So we'll kind of keep an eye on it here for the next 20 minutes and see if this becomes all thunderstorm warnings in a big area of heavy rain, or if we still have this tornado trying to hold together in the Anthony area.
Yeah, MCS development probably, I bet you, later this evening. It'll probably be a noisy night across eastern Kansas, I'm betting tonight. But sorry, I was just looking through. I was just looking to see if there are any damage reports. There was one. It's kind of in a weird location, though. That came up north of Hazleton. It says possibly suspected tornado, and I'm looking back on the radar scans, and there is a little notch there. It's just kind of in a weird spot. So I'm wondering what in the world that was about. Let's take a look at this. So, again, it's just suspected. I mean, so it's right here, Chris, right there. All right. Take a look. I'm trying. Well, let me double check what time this was. This would have been sort of about 20 minutes ago. So let's back it up here and see. Would have been, what time was it? 7:20, right there. So there may have been. So remember when we were looking at the storm, Chris?
Yep.
We were focusing on this, and there might have been something right here, too. I kind of noticed it, I kind of wrote it off as maybe just a little bit of a downburst or something. Yeah, it just says report of suspected tornado. I mean, like I said, it could have just been a downburst, but kind of interesting there. It was right around when that storm. See if we can back it up. Might have been from that initial. It's just interesting. It's kind of in a weird spot though, so I'm wondering if they might, if it's just if it'll be correct, if it's a location notch issue. But I thought that was kind of interesting. Just figured I'd share that. That's all there is to that.
So potentially a little bit of a small tornado could have been spotted there.
Yeah, maybe a little gust-nado or something. And I'll tell you what, look at this, Chris. It just got hit by that thunderstorm, and that mesocyclone is still going. I mean, obviously it's a bit broad, but I mean, look at that. That's there's your outflow right here. This is it. That's impressive. Yeah, you got to give this storm credit, even if it doesn't end up really producing any tornadoes. I mean, it certainly gave it the old try.
So if you're listening or watching, that would be Anthony. Please take cover. There's potential radar indicated. We're showing some potential that this could be a small tornado there to the south and west. Something that's moving northeast. So Anthony, Harper, Highway 2, between Medicine Lodge and Wellington. That is definitely an area of concern here through 8 o'clock, 8:15, 8:30. Does look like that cell's going to hold together. We'll see what happens. That warning itself goes, tornado warning is got 15 more minutes on it. So we'll watch here, see if that gets extended past 8 o'clock.
And if that rotation does hold up, and that area of rotation, even though it is broad, that we are watching, just based on the fact that this storm is not giving up, that's going to put that rotation there in about less than 10 minutes over Anthony, about less than 15 minutes closer towards the Freeport area. Right now, it looks like it'll be staying well south of Harper and Crystal Springs, as well as maybe Danville. However, it is kind of fixing a bit towards Anthony, which will give us at least a little bit of an indication here of what the storm is doing. My guess is maybe certainly some gusty winds within the storm here. This is what Chris and I have been talking about. This is the rotation. It's still there, but it's not tight. It's not really down to surface. But the parent rotation is still present in this thunderstorm, at least higher up. Again, so a little bit of the mesocyclone, the rotation within the storm is still there. It's just down at the surface, not entirely there. It's a little bit broad. It's hanging in there though, but it will be this rotation. Albeit broad, will be over Anthony here. Probably about the next 5. At this point, I'd say probably about 5 minutes or so, and it could bring some little gusty winds here. So it's probably going to get breezy there. It'll be interesting to see. There was one report, albeit it was from Emping further back, but there was a report of some tree branches down. So, I mean, obviously this guy is still kicking up at least a little bit of wind. Maybe not quite as much as it had a few scans ago, but regardless of the fact, it's impressive, though, that this storm is still managing to rotate. And not only that, but, we haven't been talking much about the storm out ahead of it. This is coming up on Wellington, so Wellington's probably going to be getting heavy rain right now, maybe even a little bit of hail. And I'm curious, Chris, if we could maybe see this trying to, potentially develop. It's got a little bit of a, very faint low-level rotation. But as we take a look at this storm here, Chris, on my end, it's looking like that, there's enough activity, or not enough, there's enough lack of activity here that this might maybe try to develop a little bit. So maybe Wellington will have to, we'll keep a little bit of an eye. I think regardless, it'll still stay south of Wellington, but maybe looking forward to places like Oxford and maybe Winfield here later on. Again, just kind of somewhat of a speculation, nothing imminent right now with that storm, but it has looked kind of decent over the past couple of radar scans. So I am curious as to see how this thing is going to develop. We do have a report of a delayed report of a tornado 10 miles south-southwest of Anthony here. This is a delayed report from about 10 minutes ago, about 15 minutes ago, actually. So let me back that radar. I'm going to back this radar up here and take a look here what we were looking at. And it looks like it happened. Yep, right there. Remember I was showing you that little notch,
Yep.
Chris? That happened
I'm talking about it.
a couple of scans there. Looks like that was a report there that was an actual tornado, albeit likely very, very brief. A little bit of damage there, but that does line up with what we saw right when this storm came in. It looks like it gave that inflow just enough of a nudge at the last second to produce that little spin up there before we saw that happen. Boy, it's still holding up here. We'll see if this tries to reorganize itself, but I don't think that tornado is. My guess that tornado is not still on the ground, but the rotation that worked with that earlier is about a few minutes away from passing right over Anthony.
Yeah. So again, we were talking about that Anthony area. We got a brief tornado.
I'll put your radar up.
And we're watching this as it moves off to the northeast. This thing would expire in 10 minutes. My guess is we'll be seeing what they determine to do. Now, this is that area in Wellington. We're kind of watching right in this area, and right here is kind of where this potential tornado is. What happens when all this kind of comes together here in the next 15 minutes will tell us a pretty good indication if this is going to continue as a tornado warning or a severe thunderstorm. My hunch is that it'll probably at least do a tornado warning smaller box, into that Argonia, Mayfield, Wellington, probably on the end of it, Conway Springs area. What are you thinking?
I would bet for Anthony's storm, I could easily see them maybe doing tornado possible on a severe thunderstorm warning. But honestly, I want to see how this thing holds out. I mean, if we see that rotation reorganize itself, or potentially we could be seeing that storm up, near the Wellington area. Maybe that might become the new dominant one, just because it's out further ahead. I will say over the past couple of scans, it does appear that the rotation, albeit much weaker, is still kind of there, but it does look like it has been kind of diverging a little bit. Honestly, at this point, it's somewhat uncertain here. It's still, the signature is still there, and you can see it just west of Anthony. There's still some slight rotation evident, And as I'm looking on my end here at the higher scans, the rotation is still there in the upper levels, albeit it is not as defined as it was. So I do think that even though that initial collision might have actually helped spawn that brief tornado, just with the outflow probably from that thunderstorm was enough that it, just gave that enough of a nudge to produce probably that little spin up tornado that we were taking a look at there. I'm thinking here though that I'm really wondering if the western set or the part around Wellington, if that's going to try to take over. It's a little uncertain, to be quite honest. I'm curious. I could see either one happening. I could see either that Anthony storm reorganizing as it has done so before, but I can also see that section around Wellington, that little notch down there, potentially taking over. I could also see them both just merging into a really heavy rain event that's going to, bring some flash flood warnings around there. That I could also see. And based on what we've seen tonight, not entirely impossible. But yeah, very interesting setup to say. Very interesting, to say the least. I'm just kind of surprised that that storm has still managed to hold on at least some finite amount of its mesocyclone after that collision, and so that's why I don't want to write it off yet. I do want to point out though really quickly that tornado warning still continues north for Marietta, Oklahoma, south of Ardmore. That hook feature is still there, albeit that's not very impressive on the velocities. Nothing's been reported. It's still radar indicated. That storm could be tracking its way towards Maddo here, maybe over the next hour. This has been that long track supercell that we've been watching. It produced, at least from the pictures that we saw, probably at least a pretty decent little tornado around the Windhurst area. The storm, that supercell then kind of weakened a little bit as it made its way south of Henrietta, but then it kind of revamped itself as it approached the Red River, and it still kind of held on a little bit. It's by itself. Frankly, this atmosphere has been untouched. So, that could be a storm that we might still be watching here over the next hour. But again, nothing imminent at the moment based on what we're seeing here on radar. We haven't had any reports. In fact, I haven't seen any reports of this guy really since... well, I stand corrected. It looks like there may actually be now a trail on the ground with this storm down here. I'm going to grab my radar here really quickly. So there's our hook here. And again, this has been that long track supercell. Does appear there has been, coming through the spotter networks, a very brief tornado and then very brief tornado. Right here. So it doesn't look like it's still on the ground. It was probably very brief. The wall cloud, though, is still being reported as there. Based on these radar signatures, I would completely agree with that. It's going to be staying north of Marietta, but if we track that little hook there, and we're just going to bring it up at about 40 miles an hour, again, kind of a rural area. But regardless, we can get a couple of towns here. Greenville, about 10 to 15 minutes. Lebanon, maybe about 30 minutes. Tyler, Oklahoma, about a half hour, depending, if this continues on. Again, looks like a little rotation. The guy is, cycled again. You can see that hook right there. It has maintained this for quite a while, but it looks like it might be one of those storms that, just at least at the lower levels is just right on that edge of, producing either a little funnel cloud or a little brief tornado. Would it passed it to drop another tornado? I mean, it's been by itself. I think this atmosphere is somewhat conducive to support tornadoes. It looks like that there's nothing really to interfere with it at the moment. But yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, obviously watching this whole mess up here, coming up on Wichita. It's going to get pretty busy there now. It does look like, Chris, I hate to say it, it does look like that collision
Took it out.
brought an end to that storm. I think, it survived that one earlier, but boy, it just, and it held on for as long as it did. But I really think that collision took a hard hit on that storm.
Yeah, it just killed that back end there.
Yeah, that's.
So,
but you know what? It certainly gets the Medal of Honor for trying.
well,
That storm, kind of a shame. That's how that ended. Do want to bring up while we're at it, coming up on Perry, Oklahoma, there is a little kind of a bow segment here. To be quite honest, take a look at this. We got this bow segment right here, a little backwards scene, and we got another little one right down here, but I think that one's tracking. But this guy is actually kind of moving to the southeast. This guy is actually kind of moving in the almost opposite direction of every other storm. Could maybe be some little 50, 60-mile-an-hour winds, and that certainly some small hail coming right up on Perry here in the next few minutes. That's all there is to really note with that storm at the moment. Just wanted to throw that out there. Severe thunderstorm warning for that one storm has been canceled, but special weather statement remains. This is for the storm coming up on El Reno. Again, it just does not have the best environment to work with. There it is, right over Binger. Going to be crossing into El Reno here. But again, maybe some small hail, maybe 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts, I'm betting, but probably not much more than that. Our other big storm, again, as we were talking about, the one passing just north of Marietta. Possible little brief tornado there a few moments ago. At the moment, I don't see anything coming through on my end that says if there's anything still on the ground. It does have a little bit of a notch there. We can kind of see it on the velocity and on the reflectivity here. Keep an eye on this, but I think this is still going to be staying south of Ardmore. But again, places like Maddell, Kingston, and Mansville may have to be watched here right up along US 70 there, maybe over the next half hour or so. Obviously, the rotation is back here. The heavy rain is going to be falling over there very soon, and maybe even some hail, especially around the Maddell or Mansville area possible. Maybe some, 1 inch to golf ball size hail with that storm. That is about that. Chris, how are your Kansas storms doing? Got a couple of warnings up there.
Up in the McCook, been watching this stuff up here in northwest Kansas. It's where immediate area is. That cell, the one cell that was over Rollins County here is now lifted to the northeast. Has got a severe thunderstorm warning on it until 8:45 p.m. With 1 inch hail, 70-mile-an-hour winds for eastern Hitchcock County, which includes Culbertson, where that cell is now, and northwestern Red Willow County. I'm here with the Red Willow Lake, Curtis, Nebraska. It's on the north end here, so that is till 8:45. That's all lifting to the northeast and into that area with the severe thunderstorm watch area. We got this one cell back here in Colorado that's kind of on the back end of the system. Will probably die down here as the sun sets and become more stay non-severe as it moves through areas along 34 highway here in southwest Nebraska. And then we've got the activity out on 24 highway and 36 to the south of 36, moving north and east. In the Osborne Downs, Beloit areas, again, those have severe thunderstorm warnings on them. And in that area of the watch here until 1 a.m. this morning. So these areas along the Kansas-Nebraska border, up in Nebraska is where the overnight focus is with the severe thunderstorm watch. And then this thing, the cell, like you said, lost its punch when it merged into the Wellington storm and now has a severe thunderstorm warning, which does include Highway 2 from Harper all the way to Wellington and Oxford until till 9 o'clock this evening with 1.25-inch hail and 70-mile-an-hour winds. So again, we've got looks like a thunderstorm warning in place. It'll be most of the area south of Wichita. There is thunderstorms moving into the Wichita area, and we'll probably see this area fill into severe thunderstorms, potentially non-severe, at least heavy rainfall moving into areas south of Salina through Wichita, down south to Oklahoma City, here until 9 o'clock. But again, it looks like this line's kind of losing some of its steam as we head towards past the 8 o'clock hour.
Kind of a shame with Cape values as high as they were today that, you know. Hey, I do want to point out, getting a couple of reports here. So my guess here is that it looks like we did have a tornado that was on the ground, probably right around the Hazleton area, feeding into that tornado report that I mentioned just a little bit ago. So it looks like right before that collision did happen. It's entirely possible that that storm had managed to had managed to maybe produce a little brief tornado and then potentially a second little brief tornado, or they could have both been the same one, but it would have happened right before the collision, and that would have been around Hazleton, and then going back to that report just southwest of Anthony. Again, I'm looking at it on my end. It doesn't appear that it would have been an overly strong one. But yeah, I do have a report south of Hazleton near Kiowa. Some trees snapped and some damage to a building and some power lines down. So that would have been down here. If I back that up, it kind of matches up a little bit there. Location may have been off slightly. Then we had that tornado report right as it was passing over just southwest of Anthony. There was a little uptick there in the notch, and then so it could have been two little brief tornadoes, or it could have been, you know, one little weak tornado. I just think it's kind of interesting, though, that it looks like it did manage, Chris, which tells me, you know, it makes me wonder if that collision hadn't happened, you know, the storm certainly, you know, held out. But yeah, so we're taking a look right there. See it right there?
Yep.
Oh my goodness! I'm sorry. I'm doing all this, and
I'm going to need to head out here in a second, but just wanted to,
yeah, you're fine.
To, you know, watching that Wichita area, folks are heading back, and
yeah,
we got alumni here in Atwood, so I'm going to go down there and talk about storms and weather valet and for a little bit. And again, it's been a pleasure doing severe weather and getting Kansas covered. We've been tracking these storms all spring, and we continue to do that. And we'd like the support of everybody that's been watching that this evening to subscribe to Weather Valet. You probably watched me messaging back and forth here on the phone. We're getting that real time, and that is the folks that we're specifically consulting for in Kansas. And again, we know a lot of folks around Wichita, so again, that was kind of the focus tonight. Storms are moving in, rain. Right now, the severe stuff is to the south, and I'm going to sign out and go to our alumni banquet.
Bring me back some food, Chris.
Okay, barbecue, it always is.
Send me it. I don't care. Put it in a box and mail it to me, for heaven's sake. I want barbecue.
All right, we'll get you some barbecue.
All right.
Okay.
Dang right. Just send me the barbecue. Send me the barbecue. Send me the whole grill.
Okay.
Cheerio.
Cheerio.
All righty, everyone. That leaves just me here. So, long story short here, again, we're taking a look at this storm again. This has been kind of the strongest one that we have had. And new tornado warning literally just coming up on it. And this is going to be, let me see here. This is going to be brand new tornado warning. Ironically, it does actually include the southeastern tip here of Ardmore, Oklahoma. And it's going to be for this little notch here. It does look like the storm has taken a little bit of a, well, we don't need 30 frames of it. We'll just go 7. Is taking a little bit of a a little bit of an northeasterly turn. Not a big one, but we can see it right about here as we, there we go. Oh, wow, that's all over the place. Okay, let's let me get that fixed here really quickly. Now go figure. As soon as it's only me, then everything has got to mess up. All right, we'll back this up here really quickly. And we are going to, well, actually, really quickly, I do want to go over this guy up here. Again, mainly just heavy rain at this point. There's still a few little small pockets here and there of rotation, but this collision, I'll tell you what, though, bringing some heavy rain south of Wichita here. That could be pretty interesting. See some of those rainfall totals. But let's go back to our Ardmore storm here. Again, we have this little notch of rotation right here. Storm is tracking a little bit to the, is now kind of taking a slightly northerly turn here. This has been kind of a long tracked supercell. It has a history of producing at least 1 or 2 little tornadoes earlier on. One of them, Michael had shown some pictures of it that came from around the Windhurst area, but and then it kind of weakened a little bit and then regained itself as it crossed the Red River, and it's been holding out since. It does appear that at one point this guy probably produced a little spin-up tornado further down around this area here, kind of out in the rural areas, just north of the Red River, and now we're seeing it kind of revamping again. So that new tornado warning, again, as mentioned, is going to include Ardmore area, Dixon, Maysville. Tornado is now observed. So we're going to pull up our good old friend, the velocities. Given the fact that we're kind of far away from the radar, what we're going to do here is do a little bit of a track here. Just give that quick moment here. And there is about right there, a little bit of a notch, kind of hard to see, but it's going to be this area right here. And as I mentioned, the storm is tracking about that way, 40 miles an hour. So we'll just go ahead and line that up here and see here if we can get maybe How y'all doing? Let's get that radar back up. All right. Sorry about that, everyone. I had to readjust some stuff on my end. And let's get that radar back up here. Oh, it's been a long evening, hasn't it been? All right. Let's take a look here. There we go. There's our beautiful storm, ladies and gentlemen. Wow. All right. So, a little technical magic there for you. So, again, this is kind of the main storm that we're watching right up around Dixon area here. Again, still, let's see, is it still being tagged as observed? Yes, it is. Again, coming right up on southern part here of the Ardmore area. Looks like it could be tracking very close to the airport, but I still think maybe staying out of the downtown area. This is the area right here we're watching, just a little bit of a notch here. Not the strongest signature. This storm does have a history of producing at least some little tornadoes earlier on. It has been our longest tracking supercell, though it has not been producing a lot in the way of tornadic activity, at least recently, but still bears at least a little bit of watching. That, folks, is our strongest storm right now. So what are we going to be expecting as we head our way through the evening hours? Well, let me tell you what we're going to be expecting as we head our way through the evening hours. We're kind of at the height of these severe weather probabilities. Fair enough. A lot of these storms have been running into each other. The watches have not been extended further east, but that might change later on. I think it might still be a kind of a stormy evening across eastern Kansas, as well as parts of northeastern Oklahoma. This activity down around the Ardmore area has been our longest track supercell. It's going to kind of continue to track its way to the northeast here as we head our way forward, maybe over the next hour or so. Again, we're still picking up a little bit of that rotation right here on our storm, still being labeled as an observed tornado. Albeit, let me double check here on my end. I just want to see here if we've gotten any new reports. And at the moment, we have not, but we do know there are at least some storm spotters on that, so we'll probably know if there is anything recent here in just a little bit. But again, probably not an overly strong tornado, at least based on what we're seeing. Doesn't mean that that's still not possible, but at least on some of the scans that we've been seeing. So otherwise, today's event been a little bit weird. The instability to a degree has been there, and the conditions have been there. The problem is that maybe a little too much. Everything just kind of fired up, and they started running into each other, which is just not good for a multitude of reasons. It's not you don't want your storms running into each other because it creates a whole lot of mess. In fact, for those of you who might have been watching earlier, we were talking about the Wichita area, a couple of storms making their way there, and one particular supercell that really held out pretty nicely. It survived a couple of hits, or survived at least one hit, and a couple of little smaller ones. Unfortunately for that storm, it ran into a kind of a big storm that, it did hold up for a bit, but then it couldn't hold up any longer, and that was around the Wichita area. And it just kind of created these blob, more or less, of some storms. All right, so where does that leave us? Well, it leaves us with a real predicament in terms of weather. It means that we don't really have much, instability there's still some of that instability there, but this is not what you would want if you were looking for a big severe weather outbreak. You don't want all these storms running into each other. Regardless, it's going to be pretty windy and rainy in Wichita here, probably over the next hour or so as those storms track up. A little bit breezy too, and that just leaves us, obviously, with our lone guy all the way down here in Oklahoma. Well, southern Oklahoma, I guess I should say, with our tornado around the Ardmore area. Again, right now, not seeing any. It's now back to radar indicated. So that being said, folks, we'll keep an eye on these storms. We're probably going to wrap up this live chat here and let you guys go back to your evening. We might be back tomorrow with the more possibility of a couple of strong storms across parts of the Midwest, around the Indiana area. Could be interesting to watch there. So thank you all very much for taking the time to join me. And as always, make sure you subscribe. Yeah, I guess that's all I had to add. All right. See y'all back later on. In the meantime, have a good rest of your evening, and thank you so much for watching.